being an independent journalist, you could sort of play in a lot of playhouses, sandboxes, and this is a sandbox that I'm looking forward to. And I'm going to be working with the old Charlie Rose producer. If you remember that old Charlie Rose show. And we want to create, we want to create that sort of that conversation, that smart, that sort of, this is for, Charlie Rose in some ways was the old, it was for news junkies, right? It was for the overly informed. And then that's what's going to be fun about this. It's actually making a program for that crowd and trying to surface people you don't normally get to talk to, hopefully. But the other thing is just simply always making sure it's a face-to-face conversation. We're all boxing ourselves so much now, and you do get more. You can get more out of somebody if you can be face-to-face. It's just logistically it's hard, right? I mean, I wish we could be face-to-face more often, and it isn't always easy, and that's one goal we're going to try to set.
Isn't one of the founders of this, I read somewhere a couple of days ago, wasn't she a PBS NewsHour alum?
She was, Jane Ferguson.
Yeah, Jane Ferguson.
One of their terrific war correspondents and all over the globe, award-winning journalist. And she is she's the founder. Look, she's impossible to say no to. That's what I'll tell you.
When you
she's
start,
awesome.
When you
we're gonna start this summer. We're gonna start rolling it out this summer. But it's like anything, you're gonna have growing pains and learn. But that's what's exciting about this world of independent media. We're all nervous about basically the foundation of Noosphere are journalists that have been laid off, and because more big companies don't want to spend the money to send journalists to war zones, or to send journalists to famine zones, or to send journalists, to the places that we need to shed light on. And if you don't have the resources to do it, nobody's going to see these atrocities. So, I mean, in some ways, it's an attempt to save international journalism in the English language.
That's a great, when you think about international journalism now, I think of CNN does a very good job with international, the New York Times, and really, is there anybody
that's it
beyond that?
No, I mean, most of the Post, the LA Times, when you think about, we've had some, Miami Herald when I was growing up had an extensive Latin American bureaus and all this stuff. All these papers had to pull back, right? They all pulled back from that. I mean, the Times is it, arguably. Even the Journal doesn't have the same amount of international correspondence they did even 10 years ago. The Times really in the U.S. over here is it. And then you've got, I think the Times of London is pretty aggressive themselves. Obviously BBC is, but I really think this is going to be, I think it could be bigger than that. But Noosphere is going to be, I think, the best place to truly picture of the international of how we're fitting into the international puzzle.
It's going to be called Sunday Night with Chuck Todd. We can't wait. Looking forward to it. Congratulations. Good to see you.
Yeah, great to talk to you, Chuck.
I look forward. Bill Belichick will be my first guest. Intimate conversation.
If she allows it, actually.
Speaking of the New York Times, they just did a whole massive takeout about Bill Belichick and the girlfriend. It was
so we don't have to be embarrassed. Is that your point?
Well, they're engaged now, right?
Supposedly,
allegedly.
They're engaged.
Did you hear they changed the name of the boat? In all seriousness, do you know this? His boat was called the Eight Rings. It's now called 1+8 Rings. Is the new look at Chuck Todd.
Wow.
Nice.
It's amazing. No matter how old you are and how much life you live, you're still a sucker. You can still become a sucker.
Beautiful.
You can still become a sucker.
Yeah.
Wow. Good to see you, Chuck.
Guys.
See you
Chuck
next
Todd,
week.
thank you very, very much. And congratulations on the new business. We've been speaking with political analyst Chuck Todd, host of the Chuck Toddcast, former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, and soon to be the host of a brand new show, Sunday Night with Chuck Todd, on the Noosphere platform. That's spelled Noosphere, Noosphere platform. It starts next month. Thanks so much to Chuck Todd. Coming up after a quick break, we're opening the phone and text lines. We finally have a clear sense of what is inside, but at least most of it, Trump's tax and immigration bill that just passed in the House. It is certainly big. Is it beautiful? Well, we'll talk about it. We'll break it down best we can and get your reaction after a quick break. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on the Culture Show, George Takei. At age 88, the actor and activist has lived long, prospered, and used his platform to fight for social justice. He joins us to talk about Star Trek and his star turn with the Boston Pops. Plus, we turn up the volume on Boston Calling with a preview of the national acts and local bands taking the stage. That and more on the Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Boston Ballet, presenting Romeo et Juliet, a fresh take on Shakespeare's timeless tale with breathtaking choreography and live music by the Boston Ballet Orchestra. Opens May 29th. Official tickets at bostonballet.org. And the Boston Public Art Triennial, bringing new public artworks and events open to the public to neighborhoods across Boston from May through October. Learn more at thetriennial.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Live at the library tomorrow. Best of for the holiday on Monday. And Ask the Mayor, Mayor Wu next Wednesday. Patrick Radden Keefe in studio today at 1 o'clock. We finally know what's in Trump's much-hyped tax cut and deportation package that just passed the House 215 and 214. Overnight, and we can confirm it is big and beautiful, sort of like the president promised, in the way that, I don't know, the Titanic hitting the iceberg was big and beautiful, or, as Marjorie suggested, the invention of the Dickie, for example. In its current form, the bill would create new community engagement requirements, that's a quote from Medicaid, basically cutting roughly 7 million people off from their health care. It would also reduce
at least
food stamp benefits. In total, if you combine all the elements, it would increase the wealth, the resources of the top 10% and decrease those of the bottom 10%. And for the middle class, by the way, as the deficit goes up, interest rates go up, car loans more expensive, mortgages more expensive, unaffordable. It's not all takeaways. $46.5 billion for the border wall, enough money to hire an additional 10,000 ICE officers. And perhaps most important, I don't know if Marjorie mentioned this before, legislators included a provision to repeal federal excise tax on tanning salons. It's really in there. Another issue near and dear to the heart of the president. There's much more. We'll get it to you in a minute. And by the way, this is not going to be a scintillating 30 minutes. We just felt as a public service obligation, we wanted to share with you what may become law depending on what happens in the Senate. The number is 877-301-8978 to call or text. Are you concerned about how the real impact of this on your life, the life of people you care about, your ability to get by? If you support what the president's doing, are you excited about the prospect of, who wouldn't be, of a cheaper tan next time you're at the mall? 877-301-8970. Can I list a few more things?
Yeah, don't forget the gun silencers. That's one of my favorite
things. Well, why don't you do it? You want to do that one?
Well, there's a tax, a $200 tax on gun silencers, and they're going to get rid of the $200 tax on gun silencers.
It's been there almost 100 years, 90 years.
1934, the days of Al Capone and the machine guns going in and gunning people down. But, when you think about in these horrible mass shootings that we have from time to time, one of the ways that the police officers that respond are able to find the mass shooter is the sound of the gunfire. Well, silencers make it a lot harder and make it take more time for the police officers to find the person with a silencer on their weapon. So that is just a help in being able to kill more people more quickly.
I'm sorry, you're going to continue.
And I also want to mention the federal government already is prevented from funding abortion through something called the Hyde Amendment.
I used to lobby Henry Hyde, by the way. When he was lobbying in Congress from Illinois.
Yeah. But Planned Parenthood did fund things like cancer screenings, Pap tests, those kinds of things, because it was cheaper. And if for women who didn't have health care or for whatever reason were not able to get health care, they could go and get very inexpensive cancer screenings, Pap tests, birth control through Planned Parenthood, but they're going to get rid of that as well. And the other thing...
No, let's be clear. Federal government, as you say, is not funding any of the things that are the reason for them cutting their funding. The things that they do with federal funds are all of huge value.
Correct.
That even
to
conservatives,
women.
Theoretically, to women.
That's
correct.
Right. And the other thing, remember Trump ran this fraudulent university called, of course, Trump University. And it was such a scam that he had to pay $25 million for defrauding all these students that went there thinking they were going to learn how to be big businessmen like he is. Well, tucked away in this bill is it's going to be a lot harder if you are defrauded, like these students were by Trump University, these for-profit universities that promise you things and they don't deliver.
Right.
If you took out all these loans to go to one of these schools, it's going to be a lot harder to get those loans canceled. And one more thing. I've talked a lot about why, with the president defying the courts, he's supposed to be facilitating the removal of Abrego Garcia back from that prison in not the worst
Well,
prison.
the thing out of Boston, we were talking to Andrea about the South Sudan deportees.
Yep. So the option that the courts have is to hold people in contempt. Well, this bill will make it much more difficult for federal courts to hold people in contempt, which means the one way that the courts can fight back may be eliminated.
Let me just add a couple of more things just so it's comprehensive. Some things people feel good about. They're going to eliminate taxation on tips up to $25,000 from what I understand. It's not a total thing, I don't think.
Those are all going to go away.
And on overtime. And they can be extended just like that. I mean, in fairness, they could be extended just like the tax cuts are being extended.
Now, these Medicaid cuts will not come in until 28, 29, a lot of them.
Well, no, they're moving them up to buy some of the votes from yesterday.
Oh,
actually.
they moved them up?
They moved
I'm
some
sorry.
of those things
To
up.
when now?
2026, I think.
2026,
But I don't
okay.
want to. But let me just say one or two more things. So people like that, their new savings accounts for children, they were going to be called MAGA accounts.
Yeah.
They changed the name to Trump accounts. And by the way, while you may say that's a great thing, they are far less advantageous as a tax matter than the 529 accounts that already exist. So it's this hodgepodge of things, the vast majority of which most people who voted on it didn't even know about. And the bottom line, as I say, increases resources in total for the top 10% of Americans, reduces them for the bottom 10%. And the most dramatic impact, I think, on the middle class is what I mentioned before, is the deficit balloons, interest rates go up, which means it's more expensive to buy a car, it's more expensive to buy a house. Our number is 877-301-8970. This was a blind vote from the American people, and they didn't know whether it was Trump or the Democrats who proposed this package. Do you think 10% of people in this country would say they supported this thing?
Well,
I don't think
Chuck
so.
Todd just said this. This is not a popular. Most of this is very unpopular. I mean, 3/4 of people do not want cuts on Medicaid because almost everybody, unless you're really wealthy, is counting on Medicaid to take care of you in your old age.
Well, it's another middle class thing. You're absolutely right. It's not just
Yeah.
low income people. The nursing home is often for middle class people too.
Yeah, and one thing, I'm not enough an economist to understand. People say we should worry about the deficit, we shouldn't worry about the deficit. But it's interesting that there's a little number here, and this points out that the deficit is getting so huge that every $1 billion spent on interest, and we're spending an awful lot of money on our interest now, is $1 billion is not spent on something else, like fixing roads or bridges or whatever.
Sure.
But back in 2007, we had the Great Recession, the whole crash of the housing market. The U.S. debt to GDP, what's GDP? Gross domestic product. Yeah, stood at around 62%. Today, it stands above 120%. And the reason that's a big deal is that in a crisis like COVID, the federal government was able to step in and ship out a lot of money to people. It wasn't a perfect system, but they did ship out a lot of money to people when people who lost their jobs, etc. The fear is that with the rate so huge at 120%, and going to keep growing because this is going to add trillions to the deficit, that the federal government won't be able to as adequately protect the taxpayers in another crisis.
Our number is 877-301-8870. Just one text I want to get to before we get to the calls. If you guys only scrutinize bills, this is Pete, New Hampshire, texted, Biden signed the same way you're doing to this one. I've seen no real improvement from Biden's $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill. In fact, the Brookings Institution study, which I happen to have read about 4 or 5 days ago, says $300 billion plus. $300 billion has already been deposited in state budgets and in direct investment in transportation projects. So, in fact, there's been a lot of benefit.
Not to mention clean energy. That's the other thing. They're getting rid of all the clean energy tax cuts so we can be more polluted. But one of the problems here is even some Republicans have pointed out through that infrastructure bill, they got a lot of clean energy jobs in their districts. Right here in Massachusetts, we have people down in New Bedford and Fall River with the wind farms going to be off Cape Cod. Well, one of them is too far along to be hurt, but the status of some of the other ones, at least to me, is unclear because they haven't gotten all their permits yet, and Trump wants to get rid of all permits for clean energy wind farms.
Aaron and Newton, you're first. Thanks for your patience. Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
I don't use the word terrified very often, but I am truly terrified by the provision in this bill that effectively eliminates the ability to enforce an order of contempt against the executive.
Yeah,
what that really means is that Trump will now be an absolute dictator. He can do anything he likes. You go to court, maybe even you get to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court orders him to do something. He thumbs his nose at it and goes right ahead and does anything that he likes. And there's absolutely no recourse that anybody has.
Can I, without giving people a real headache, I'm going to do it really briefly. The way they do this, Aaron, I'm sure you know, it sounds like, is they're going to start requiring financial deposits from people who sue the Trump administration. And the problem with that, generally, they aren't the richest of organizations. It's often nonprofits, civil liberties union, things like that. If you can't make the deposit, then it will take away, as you suggested, the contempt power from federal judges. It is an abomination, and I would agree with you. The one item with potentially the most draconian impact in this whole thing could be that, and thanks for highlighting it. We appreciate it.
He's already defying the Supreme Court. He's not facilitating the release from the Maryland.
But they haven't given up the power to hold him in contempt. They haven't exercised it yet, as Aaron suggested, and we mentioned that power will effectively be taken away from even the most aggressive federal court judge. Aaron, thanks for the call. 877-301-8970.
Mary in the car, thank you for calling.
Hi, Mary.
I'm just dumbstruck by what that previous caller just said, and It takes the wind out of my sails to hear that. That just makes me feel like my call is minuscule. But I just
go ahead.
I was just going to say that what you had said about the tanning salons and silencers, it's going to be it's a stupid bill and ridiculous bill that now it's going to be cheaper to get skin cancer and cheaper to kill someone.
Well,
and I think the whole thing is ridiculous.
Well, that was not a small point, Mary, at all. Those were great points. And by the way, if people, in a moment of seriousness about the tanning thing, it's not Donald Trump doesn't get his orange skin from a tanning salon.
He uses some cream.
He does, but the reason why they're repealing that is the fee on tanning salons was used to fund the Affordable Care Act, and any way they can take a hit at that without repealing it, because people actually like it, they will do. Mary, that was actually an excellent call. Thank you. You
know what's incredible, though? We have these stories day after day. The other day, the Globe had a story about how the number of people, I don't know sure if it was over 55 or over 65, the homelessness rate. And it's not because they're drug addicts or anything else, it's because they can't afford the rents. Yeah. So we have a huge income inequality crisis, and this is just going to make it's just going to make it worse. I mean, the big help is going to go from people who are well, in Massachusetts, you're not necessarily wealthy if you're making over 157 grand, but you're certainly in better shape than somebody who's making 50 grand.
Can I, one last thing before we take a break here. The line that you've heard, if you're watching television around this, that every Republican has used when they say, well, this is going to add $4 trillion to the deficit. Oh, no, the bipartisan Congressional Budget Office always makes mistakes, et cetera, et cetera. They say the exact same thing. Well, put it in context. The largest increase in the deficit in the history of the United States of America was during what presidency?
Donald Trump's first presidency.
Exactly. So, I mean, this BS that, no, is not going to be a huge increase in the deficit. And that may be arcane for a lot of people and say, well, do I really care in tough economic times if it's another $4 trillion? As I said to you, the impact on you, indirectly but profound, is interest rates on everything go up, including, as I said, car loans and home loans, which are the two major purchases that most middle-income families make in this country. So there is an impact on you by deficit increase. We got to take a break.
Okay, but you're the tax guy. If you have a lot more children, maybe you're in better shape with the child tax credit going up.
Well, why do you think that Elon Musk has like 100? I mean, his tax bill is virtually non-existent.
Well, that's right. That story a few weeks ago. We know of 14 for sure, but there could be dozens that we don't know.
There was a story from a credible source that they could have 100.
Yeah, he's trying to bring a lot of children with him when he goes to Mars. Yeah, okay. We're talking about this big, beautiful bill, so-called. What do you think about this? Are you distraught? Do you think it's swell? Our number is 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The world takes takes you outside your borders and connects you with the most important events happening all across this big blue marble.
We introduce you to memorable people whose stories will stay with you for a lifetime. I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler, global news and inspiring voices that will keep you on top of the world.
Listen each weekday.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Boston Symphony Orchestra, announcing the 2025 season of Tanglewood, showcasing the beauty of incredible surroundings and world-class music. Tanglewood, where music goes for the summer. Tanglewood.org. And the law firm of Davis Malm, knowing the lay of the land, not just the law. Learn more at davismalm.com. Davis Malm. Lean, agile, strategic.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, live at the library tomorrow. If you're just joining us, we're getting your reaction to what you know about the Big Beautiful Bill. That's what it's called, by the way. That is the name of the act. Passed by the Republicans 215 to 214 onto the Senate. You made a wonderful point. That first caller, Aaron, highlighted, as we tried to do, this inhibition, this limitation on federal courts' ability to hold anyone but the Trump administration in particular in contempt if they violate court orders, as we believe they're doing now. The wonderful point you made during the break is that wasn't in any of the major stories. The only reason I even knew about it is because you mentioned it at the staff meeting this morning, and then I Googled Big Beautiful Bill and federal courts. So the average reader, even if he or she or they are trying to consume as much of this as they can, wouldn't even know about this. You know, it's just really... It's unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. Here's another one. Now, talking about the AI restriction. Now, this was supposed to be in the bill. I don't know if it made it or not.
Can you guys look? Oh, Jamie is looking, apparently.
Yeah, it was talking about how there would be a prohibition on states restricting artificial intelligence in the next 10 years. It was proposed. We don't know if it made it through, but our staff is looking into it.
The other thing we're looking into, by the way, if they're changing the constitutional definition of habeas corpus to whoever Donald Trump wants to deport. We don't know if that's in there. We'll let you know.
I heard this long interview with the vice president this morning. It was interviewed by this fairly conservative Catholic guy who writes for the New York Times, Russ Todd, whatever you say his name. And it was just amazing to listen to him dance around all this stuff. You know, it's just because he's a smart guy and he knows that they've screwed up, true. And he just trying to turn himself into a pretzel to answer these questions. Anyway, but good for him for at least giving the interview. Jennifer from West Roxbury, what do you think?
Hi, Jennifer.
In addition to, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
In addition to all of the other frightening things, that nobody has mentioned the effect that the cuts in Medicare are going to have, not just on individuals, but on the healthcare system.
Right.
CMS funds all of the residencies that are accredited in the United States, that where physicians get their clinical training. And if you decimate that, you are decimating the pipeline for new physicians, as well as ruining the health care that's provided in all the academic medical centers.
You know, Jennifer, you raised
a
huge point. Also, you glossed over it, but we forgot about it. While Trump has promised not a dollar will be cut from Medicare, and we didn't mention it, because the deficit, the increase in the debt is going to be so large, it automatically triggers a provision that's going to cut in the neighborhood of $500 billion a year from Medicare. That's really important because nowhere in the legislation does it say we're cutting Medicare, but by virtue of the debt increase, Medicare will be cut close to $500 billion a year. And I assume everybody knows, unlike RFK Jr., who doesn't know that Medicare is a critical health coverage for the elderly, not to mention the education you mentioned. Jennifer, really thank you for that
And you
call.
think of Mass Health in Massachusetts is a great program. I mean, it's our Medicaid. We don't call it Medicaid here. We call it Mass Health. So many people I know that get great care through that, and that's at risk. We have a texter who just says, my daughter received basic health care from Planned Parenthood and lost out about a month ago due to funding cuts. Now my grandkids might lose their Medicaid. If that person is in Massachusetts, it would be their Mass Health. And we do a lot. I mean, I was talking to somebody who was looking to buy a house in Massachusetts. They were talking about how expensive it is, and they were thinking going to Rhode Island. I said, well, Rhode Island's a great place, but the problem with Rhode Island is they don't have the services here that Massachusetts does. The day services for people with developmental disabilities, the special ed services. If your kid is autistic, or you can get respite care, so you can get, go to the supermarket we do a lot of stuff in Massachusetts that other states don't do. And I think he's got a bullseye on Massachusetts. I think the Globe had a front page story. It was talking about health
research
costs,
funding, yeah.
But we're losing more than any other state in the union. So a lot of
research stuff.
So a lot of what makes this state great is under threat.
Did you see that one of our colleagues did check to see if your 10-year ban on state level AI regulations in the bill? It's in there.
Yeah. And supposedly that was because the Saudis didn't want to have too much regulation on. I'm serious. When I first read about this, it was something that I guess Trump discussed over in his Middle East trip, where her sons were over there doing business deals. Laurel from Needham. What do you think, Laurel?
Hello, Laurel.
Oops.
Laurel.
Yeah,
we can.
Go
Hi.
ahead.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm even more terrified the more I listen. That I'm terrified, particularly about the increase in ICE. I've had a bumper sticker that says, from the last time around with Trump, that says, ICE is the new SS. I mean, everything that is unfolding is such a parallel to in Germany. And we're at this key point in time that, Margie mentioned which worldview, which realm of facts or not facts, is crumbling, which one's going to win kind of thing. And I think we're at the crucial point where anyone who's not a Trumper, we need to think about, and in public settings, how to raise funds for protection for people to speak up. The congressperson from Alaska, she said the retribution is real. Say that. But anyway, it's scary for people to speak up, and we're at a crucial point. And I think we have to think about primitive power the way Trump has returned us to. That is to say, put him in jail now. ICE is powerful, no limits, and therefore, what recourse will we have?
Laurel, your call is particularly timely because we had the Attorney General on yesterday, Andrea Cabral, who I think, this is my personal opinion, actually cares deeply and is deeply concerned about what ICE is doing in the state. And there was a report on our interview in the Boston Globe this morning basically summarizing, I think it's fair to her to say that she thought there's very little she could do except after the fact. She was exploring some things. So when you have an attorney general who is totally on the right side of the ICE issue saying there's not that much I can do, even though she's going to try, that makes the horror you're describing, I would argue, even more terrifying. And, Laurel, thanks for calling.
It's not even deporting. It's sending people without due process to prisons in foreign countries when you think of deportation.
And then saying when a judge asks you, I don't know anything about it.
Exactly.
We don't know what country. And that which we do know is classified. I can't wait till Judge Gertner tells us what she thinks about that.
We're going to talk with Andrea Cabral a little bit about this too. And then, but it's kind of like when you think of deportation, you think of, okay, if you came here from Mexico, we're going to nab you, send you back to Mexico. If you came here from wherever you came from, we're going to send you back to your home. We weren't talking about sending you back.
After you get notice and due process.
That's right. We didn't talk about sending you to a different country in a prison.
It's in the middle of a civil war.
And in the case of El Salvador, a prison that no one gets out of.
Yeah.
I mean, people die there. They don't go for 5 years or 10 years. It's just, I don't know what we're going to do about this, Jim. I really don't know.
877-301-8970. We're trying to talk through as much as we know about it. I'm sure we're missing plenty, but we know a decent amount, too, of what's in this bill that by one vote passed the House, 215 to 214, and is on its way to the Senate.
We didn't mention endowments. Those are up 21. They want to put the
tax the endowments
up to 21%.
Of certain. You got to have an endowment over X billion. I can't remember what the threshold is, but from low single-digit tax to 21%. And the reason for that is not just because he's after higher education, but because it's going to help reduce the deficit impacts of his tax cuts, primarily for the wealthy.
Annie in Bristol, what do you think?
Hello, Annie.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
Long-time listener, love you guys.
Thank you.
I'm pretty upset about the big, beautiful bill that's not so beautiful but very big. I think there is a provision in it to allow the executive branch of the federal government to take away the nonprofit status of nonprofit organizations. And that becomes very scary and dangerous since so many of those nonprofit organizations provide lots of services and health care to people, and they're not going to be able to get it.
Can I, Annie, you may be right. We will have our coworkers check. I don't know if those provisions, as I say, you may be right, are in this bill. I do know, as we've discussed with a number of people, the initial plan was on Earth Day to announce that tax-exempt benefits would be removed from any organization that works on climate issues. The goal was to eliminate climate from the eligible description. That didn't happen. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but I promise you we will check to see if that's actually in this bill, that which you're talking about, and thank you for bringing it up for us. We appreciate
we get
it.
a lot of these texts saying that Medicaid does not cover old people, that we're mistaken. Medicare does. Medicaid covers people in nursing homes.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, you might be very ill at a young age, but generally speaking, people that are in nursing homes are older. So it's Medicaid that pays for that. If you can pay on your own, then you can. I mean, that's the way it works here. You can pay on your own until you run out of money, and then you end up going on Medicaid.
Right.
And then
Only when you've spent down virtually everything you have.
And they take your house in many situations, too. So that Medicaid does cover people in nursing homes.
Yeah, Medicare is health care, basic health care for over
people
65.
That are still at home.
Robert actually, we only have 30 seconds, Robert. If you can use it, it's yours in Brockton. Welcome.
Thank you. Then I'll just shorten it all.
Please.
For all the worry, for all the concern, for the nervousness, here's what I recommend.
Quickly.
I will buy everybody a big package of Depends and wear those and calm down.
That's really an incredibly helpful discussion. Why don't you start with just buying them for yourself, Robert, and then we'll worry about whether anybody else needs them.
Is what we need at the moment.
No, that was a really major contribution to our show.
Thank you anyway.
Thank you.
Okay,
Excellent.
Coming up after the new news, we're going to talk with former Suffolk County Sheriff and Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety, Andrea Cabral. We're going to talk to her about this, some of what we just talked about. And you're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And North Shore Music Theater, presenting the Broadway musical Waitress, with new music by singer-songwriter Sarah Bareilles. On stage at Bill Henney's North Shore Music Theater from June 3rd through June 15th. Ticket information at nsmt.org. Dame Maggie Smith played her most iconic roles later in life, but her award-winning career spanned 6 scene-stealing decades. Catch Discovering Maggie Smith tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2 of Boston Public Radio. The Department of Justice has moved to drop police monitoring efforts in Louisville, Kentucky, and Minneapolis, where the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd sparked nationwide desire for police reform. We'll talk about this with former Massachusetts Public Safety Secretary Andrea Cabral. Plus, the Trump administration violates another court order around deportations, and personnel troubles at Boston City Hall.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then a Trump-free chunk of the show, a music panel highlighting some great local events and artists from the Newport Folk Festival to the jazz offerings around town. We'll talk with Brian McCreath from CRB, James Bennett II of GBH News, and Berkeley's Emmett Price III. That's all ahead. Hour number 2, Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump is celebrating a narrow legislative win. Early this morning, most House Republicans put aside their differences to approve Trump's mega tax cut and immigration bill. Democrats united against the package warn the legislation will cut off millions of the country's most vulnerable Americans from Medicaid and SNAP. NPR's Claudia Grisales reports on the outcome a day after Trump met with holdouts.
House Speaker Mike Johnson, along with President Trump's help, was able to flip GOP holdouts to get the plan passed by one Republican vote.
This is a historic moment that we will be talking to our children and our grandchildren about, and everyone will remember. America's back.
The bill will extend a tax package passed under President Trump's first term, install new immigration and energy policy, and raise deductions for state and local taxes. It also includes plans for new Medicaid work requirements, which could threaten coverage for millions of Americans. The bill now heads to the Senate, where there's plenty of talk to change the plan. Claudia Grisales, NPR News.
Flags at Israeli missions are flying at half-staff after a deadly shooting at a Washington, D.C. event last night. The attack outside the Capitol Jewish Museum claimed the lives of 2 Israeli embassy staff members, Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram. The New York Times quotes Milgram's father in reporting the couple was soon to be engaged. Police identify the gunman as Elias Rodriguez, a 30-year-old Chicago man. Metropolitan Police Chief Pamela Smith says the man was detained by event security and began chanting, quote, "Free, free Palestine." The Senate's voted 51-44 to overturn a waiver allowing California to set its own air pollution standards for cars that are stricter than national regulations. The Senate has not yet voted on related resolutions to revoke 2 more waivers related to heavy-duty trucks. President Trump is hosting an exclusive dinner tonight at his Washington, D.C. area golf club. Attendees are top investors in Trump's meme coin. NPR's Scott Newman reports the event is raising ethical concerns.
Companies tied to President Trump own about 80% of his meme coins. But on the guest list for this dinner are the next 220 top investors. An elite group at the very top will also get a private tour of the White House conducted by the president himself. Norm Eisen was an ethics advisor to President Barack Obama.
Foreigners and foreign governments are going to take advantage of that situation to put money in, expecting things in return.
The White House says the president is working to secure good deals for all Americans, not for himself. Scott Newman, NPR News, Washington.
This is NPR.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston. I'm Craig Lamolt. Worcester City Manager Eric Batista is calling on residents to unify as the city grapples with the impact of a recent federal immigration operation. At the annual State of the City address last night, Batista said the ICE arrest 2 weeks ago has traumatized the community.
When I heard the anguish shrieks as a mother and a daughter were separated, I thought about what I would do if my sons or my wife were taken from me. But we can learn from it and come together to determine how we respond moving forward.
Activists have accused Worcester police of excessive force when they responded to the scene of the ICE operation. Police say they arrived to deal with the crowd concerns and were not involved in the ICE enforcement. The inaugural Boston Public Art Triennial is opening today. GBH's James Bennett II saw a preview last night.
Part of the triennial is at the Institute of Contemporary Art's Watershed Outpost in East Boston, and it features a newly commissioned work by Japanese artist Shiharu Shiota titled Home Less Home. From numerous red strings hang pieces of personal, local ephemera. Triennial founder Kate Gilbert describes the experience.
You're seeing all these threads that kind of seem like thick walls, but then turn into pathways.
and look at some of the passport pictures, or there's recipes in here. So moving to think about what is home for people.
Home Less Home, along with the other featured works of the triennial, is on display through October. James Bennett II, GBH News.
Rain today, some thunderstorms. It's chilly, not quite reaching 50. More rain tonight and showers likely tomorrow. This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from Subaru. The new Forester Hybrid offers symmetrical all-wheel drive and up to 581 miles per tank. Part of the new Forester Hybrid family of SUVs. More at Subaru.com/Forester Hybrid. This is NPR.
Here's Jim Brady. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting in Brighton and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with the latest on the Karen Reed trial from trial expert Sue O'Connell, our media maven, plus live music from Jessye DeSilva ahead of Club Passim Campfire Festival this weekend. Hope the weather holds up for them. And on Monday, for the holiday, we're going to be doing a best of a deal. One more thing. The mayor's going to be with us, Michelle Wu, next Wednesday. Hello again, Jim.
Hey, Marjorie. Here now via Zoom is former Suffolk County Sheriff, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety, Andrea Cabral, who obviously joins us weekly. Hello, Andrea. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
We're well, thank you.
No, we're not.
No, we're not.
I'm having a nervous breakdown myself.
Why do I say that, by the way? Ask me again.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm fine. No, I'm not fine. I'm sorry. Good to see you, though.
Okay. So, Andrea Cabral, we were talking a lot about the so-called Big Beautiful Bill and what it could mean for the ability of federal courts to hold Trump or people that disobey their orders in contempt. Let's talk about this local ruling involving South Sudan. We've removed apparently 8 people convicted of crimes to South Sudan, and a judge has said...
a local judge in Boston.
A federal judge, local federal judge has said they're supposed to be answering questions about that today. So what about this?
Well, I mean, we've been talking probably for months now about judicial orders and the refusal of the Trump administration via the DOJ to comply with them. And this is the latest in a series. We've talked about Judge Bosberg's orders and how those have been completely, at least in my view, virtually ignored or completely ignored. And now we have Judge Brian Murphy in Boston, who issued an order saying that the DOJ or the Trump administration could not remove, they're saying it's via deportation, but could not remove undocumented immigrants to countries that they weren't from. And of course, I mean, it's almost inevitable at this point, we find out that immigrants are being removed to countries that they're not from without due process. And Judge Murphy has said that they violated his order. Now, the next question, obviously, that we're going to have is, which is what we always talk about, where's the contempt citation? Because, he said, he literally says, it looks like contempt. It is contempt. He should just sort of say that it is contempt. But the other part of this that is so deeply troubling is that when lawyers go before judges in any forum, state or federal, judges ask for information. You are obligated to provide that information, especially if you represent the government. When the judge asks of the government, where is the plane? How did you determine that this person would be sent to wherever they're sent? How did you determine that this person was a criminal? Where's the evidence of their criminal behavior? And you stand there as a lawyer for the Department of Justice and say, I don't have that information, or that information is classified and I can't tell you. I can't explain to people how completely abnormal, contemptuous, and unprecedented it is to have a government attorney with access to government information fail and it's a refusal to provide that information to the court. It's not even like they're saying, Your Honor, we're not comfortable providing this to you in open court. Can we provide it in camera? Can you take this in camera in your lobby? Can we disclose it there? Even if you have an issue with defense counsel or plaintiff's counsel having the information, they're not doing that at all. This is an intentional refusal to abide by judicial orders. It is the executive branch co-opting, usurping, and neutering yet another branch of government in the same way they have done to Congress, where Congress is now a branch of the executive, the legislative branch is now an arm of the executive branch. They are usurping the authority of yet another branch that is supposed to be a check on their power. And that's how you destroy democracy. Democracy only works if you have three separate, co-equal branches of government that function with credibility and function independently of one another. That's not what's happening.
You know, we get these constantly.
We can't do this every day.
Okay.
We can't do this every
Andrea,
day.
just very quickly, I think it's a right-wing...
We have a text.
People constantly say that due process, you don't get it unless you're a citizen of the United States. Can you please tell this person again that is incorrect?
That is completely and totally wrong.
They don't
care.
Okay.
No. But, if you're going to be wrong, don't be wrong publicly. Be wrong privately. I mean, that's part of living in a democracy, is kind of having some sense that due process rights inure to people who reside in the country, not just citizens.
That's right. Okay.
We're talking to Andrea
We get
Cabral.
so many, that's why I mentioned it.
Okay, we're going to take a day off tomorrow. When they text us and say, do they have due process and free speech rights,
I think
we're not going to answer tomorrow.
Half the people in the United States think they have no due process because they hear this.
And do you think
from
that
right-wing
texter
media.
feels any differently after Andrea said?
Yes.
No, I don't think so.
Andrea's an authoritative figure.
Okay, so Andrea, I want to move on to something
They do
really
feel
briefly.
differently.
Okay, I don't want to discuss the merits of this case because we've discussed it before and we'll discuss it down the line. Supreme Court just deadlocked on this the question about whether public funds could go to religious charter schools. And I'm not bringing it up because of the underlying issue. And since they deadlocked 4-4, the Oklahoma Supreme Court ruling stands, which found that it was unconstitutional. The reason I bring it up is to sing the praises of an ethical justice, Amy Coney Barrett. The reason it is 4-4 rather than 5-4 in all likelihood in favor of the religious charter school being funded is because Coney Barrett recused herself. And the assumption, even though it wasn't explained by her, is that when she was at Notre Dame Law School, she had ties to the lawyers representing the school in this case. And I think it's reasonable to conclude, in light of that she would have voted to find this constitutional, but because it was the ethically right thing to do, she recused herself, and as a result, the unconstitutional finding stands. And you contrast that with the most ethically challenged justice, maybe in American history, if not criminally challenged, Clarence Thomas, who recuses himself never, despite his ethical entanglements. It seemed to me it was worth 30 seconds of just celebrating her doing the right thing, which you shouldn't have to do, but I do. Am I misguided, or is that an appropriate accolade for her?
No, I think she did exactly what used to be
that's right.
commonplace and expected of a judge at any level, but particularly at the SCOTUS level. The conflicts were clear. It should be a no-brainer to recuse oneself, but as you so adequately point out, that's not where we are. And what we found out is that that's not where we've been for a long time with Alito and Thomas and occasionally a couple of others. But we just didn't know it as much as we know it right now. But yeah, she did do the right thing. And I think Justice Roberts, who ended up, I think, siding with the three liberal justices.
We don't know that for sure. We think that based on oral argument, right? Do we know that? Do we know the vote count? I mean, the composition?
We don't, but I thought the fact that Coney Barrett wasn't part of it and it was 4-4 meant that Roberts probably did.
Probably. I would say probably.
did.
Very likely. I think you're right.
Yeah, and I wouldn't, as you know, in contrast to Coney Barrett doing the right thing, I wouldn't, if that's true, if Roberts did side with the liberal justices, I wouldn't necessarily put that down to him doing the right thing for the right thing's sake, as much as I suspect that he may recently have had good cause to worry about his legacy and the fact that they've been hand delivering the judicial branch to the executive branch as well.
Yeah, why don't they hold him in contempt? They said to facilitate the return of this guy from El Salvador. Right. Why doesn't the Supreme Court hold him in contempt? Could they? They could, I think. Could they?
I think somebody has to go up to them. Okay. The Supreme Court answers questions that are asked of them or appeals that make their way in the regular course to the SCOTUS. But that's the reason that you start at the district court level, making that finding, holding people accountable so that the regular appellate process or some emergency process can take hold.
Talking to Andrea Cabral.
So, Andrea Cabral, the Justice Department is not going to be pursuing these cases of alleged police violence, looking into incidents against black people in these different cities around the country. But in Springfield, the chief of police, or the police superintendent, I guess they call him up there, says he's going ahead with their consent decree. So get the big that was found against the Springfield Police Department. So big picture and small picture.
Okay, so the big picture is, and I really hope people pay attention to this. We've had Republican presidents, Democrat presidents, and by and large, the DOJ has retained its independence. With some notable lapses, it has retained its independence up until the last, 5 or 6 years, starting with Bill Barr, under Trump specifically. And that meant not treading on the prior work of the DOJ, in part because work like this, all of their work is so expensive, and they do it, have done it historically very deliberately, very thoughtfully, regardless of whether or not you agree with it. A lot is put into it, and it is always done with an eye toward upholding the standards of the Constitution. So when you look at the big picture of this and his rescission of this sort of malicious, racist rescission of this, and this empowering of police departments to buy their loyalty, should he need a private militia at some future point, and don't make any mistake that that's what he intends to have. Saying basically, I don't care what you do with them. He told us he was going to do this when he said, when you put them in the police car, don't be too nice. Don't do it so gently.
That's right.
He was empowering them to use excessive force. This is a policy-driven statement on that. Not only would I not mind if I would have witnessed it myself, a use of excessive force, I am going to make sure that you're not held accountable for it in my role, under color of federal law, in my role as the President of the United States. This is not a small deal. This is not a president simply having a difference of opinion with another president. This is policy, and this is direction and messaging. So I hope people get that. The smaller picture is good for Police Superintendent Lawrence Akers, and I hope that there are other police departments where these consent decrees have now been rescinded and the DOJ has, simply walked away from them. I hope that they continue to put these reforms in place because, as Akers says, it's good for their department. It is good for policing, and it is good for public safety. That is the reason the consent decrees happened in the first place. But I'm also a little worried about this being sort of a bit of a powder keg in some respects, because in some of these departments, in places like Minneapolis, Louisville, Kentucky, Trenton, New Jersey, upstate, there's one in upstate New York. These happened after significant, long-standing, and very serious complaints of institutionalized excessive force in police departments. And so for the DOJ to simply walk away, and for the public to be able to see that the DOJ, for the first time in its history, basically not working to ensure greater rights for people, but actively working to take those rights and those protections away. It's very, very dangerous. I think it's intentional to make it dangerous on the part of the Trump administration, but this is not a small thing at all.
Can we stay on this for just a second? And obviously, when you mentioned Minneapolis, George Floyd, Louisville, Breonna Taylor. The Minneapolis, the mayor there, has also said, as the Springfield chief of police has, we're going to continue to comply with the consent decree. I want to say, while they both deserve credit for doing that, I assume you'd agree the value of the consent decree is diminished when there's not the federal oversight. So great that the head cop in Springfield says we're doing it. Great that the mayor in Minneapolis says we're doing it. Maybe the mayor is going to come under pressure to not do it in Minneapolis. Maybe there's going to be a new police chief in Springfield. The continuing, as you described, Justice Department to Justice Department to Justice Department, regardless of who's the president, oversight of these things was an important element in the real reform. And so it's great that they're doing it, but it ain't the same thing, I guess is what I wanted to say.
No, that's exactly right. And the federal government its hallmark is constancy.
That's what I was trying to say.
And constancy and stability in government are what ensure that a form of government like democracy continues. That's part of the reason why you see the Trump administration blowing it up in every corner that they can find. But that is absolutely true. So if you have a different police chief, somebody retires, or there's a different administration, someone resigns, and someone else is appointed, what you basically, without the consent decree, you have left those reforms. And it takes years for reforms to become institutionalized, entrenched, and become policy for people to get used to it. You've basically left those things to the whims of politics and even to the personal whims of whoever heads a department.
We're talking to Andrea Cabral.
So, Andrea Cabral, there was this domestic incident. The woman had marks on her wrists, and the guy had bite marks on his chest and arms. This couple that had been seeing each other, they worked for City Hall. The cops were called to the house. This has become a big issue in politics in Boston because the woman allegedly had a date with a bigwig, Segun Idowu, if I pronounce it correctly.
Shagun Idowu.
Shagun Idowu. Sorry for my mispronunciation.
He used to be head of Beckman. He's now economic affairs for Mayor Wu.
So the couple supposedly had a fight because the woman had a date with this guy. What do you make of this whole situation?
Well, I mean, it's always, I think it was, first of all, I'll say, I think it was proper that they were immediately placed on leave and then were subsequently fired. They were both arrested. They both have to appear before the court. But it is absolutely true that when you work for government, you're held to a higher standard. That's just the way it is, or at least that's the way it's supposed to be. That doesn't happen with everybody, as we well know. People are held to different standards depending on who they are. But that's appropriate. I mean, in this case, it appears, at least from the police report, that these two individuals, as you say, one of whom, I think, if I'm pronouncing the last name correctly, I think it's Kudanazar, is the woman. She is the chief of staff at the Office of Police Accountability and Transparency. And then Chulan Huang is the neighborhood liaison for downtown Chinatown in the Leather District. They were apparently in a dating relationship, got into a fight that became physical. He had bite marks visible on him. She had marks on her wrists. But it's also the behavior that's reported when the police arrived, which was allegations first that she was the victim, and then subsequently saying she was lying about that when she realized that they were going to arrest him, and also, sort of invoking your status, right? I work for the city. We both work for the city. This is unnecessary. Don't arrest anyone. There's charges that she used obscenities and attacked the police officers. So it is a big deal. Now, the other part of this that you see is while Segun is Chulan Huang's supervisor, he is not Kudanazar's direct supervisor, but it is also, but that's still an issue that you may be dating, and I don't know whether or not it's true, but that's the allegation, may be dating someone who is also the girlfriend of somebody you supervise. That's ill-advised. And then you see the political part of this, which is, in politics is a game of cherry picking, sort of picking and choosing. So you see City Councilor Ed Flynn make a comment about it, followed closely by Josh Kraft, Michelle Wu's opponent, making a comment about the need to investigate this further. And that's where the political end comes in, which is why you're held to a higher standard of behavior, because these things tend to snowball. I mean, you can sort of contrast this with the silence from all city councilors around the Michael Flaherty thing, right? So you didn't, even though the city council has something to do with appointing some of those folks, you didn't see a whole lot coming from the city council about his settlement. You do see
this is at the Water and Sewer Commission, just so
And the
people
Water
know.
and Sewer
After
Commission.
he was the city council.
Yeah, it was a big settlement that he got.
A couple $100,000, yeah.
Yes, and you've seen a little bit about Marie Theodat, who is the Human Resources Director, who's under investigation for some misbehavior, but not really about Michael Flaherty, who's a former city councilor and a former colleague. So there is some picking and choosing, but that doesn't change the fact that there is going to be a spotlight on this, and that there's going to be increased pressure to look into it and for something to be made public.
Can I ask you one last question? I read quickly this morning. I want to make sure I'm right about this. If people are wondering what was the fireable offense, my understanding, it was not the domestic dispute. It was the fact that both of them allegedly did one of these, do you know who I am things. I work for the city, and the implication being I work for the city, so back off kind of thing. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Okay.
But wasn't it also attacking a police officer? Wasn't that part of
in
the
one
problem
case, that
too?
may be true. Yeah, that's
right.
Okay.
And that's the allegation. I guess you could, you certainly would have sort of the option of waiting until, they were on, I think, an unpaid leave when the story itself came to light, when the initial arrests were made. And I think that's, the unpaid leave is based on the arrest. The termination, I think, is likely based on the allegation of invoking the power of City Hall or your connection to City Hall. And I don't know at this point what internal investigation has revealed in terms of what either or both may or may not have admitted to in terms of their behavior that night.
Andrea Cabral, as always, thanks for your time and your thoughts.
Thank
Really
you very
appreciate
much,
it.
Andrea.
Good to see you.
We've been speaking with former Suffolk County Sheriff, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety, Andrea Cabral, who joins us every week. Okay. We're going to change topics in just a second to some music for some great relief. But I want to mention our colleague in the newsroom, Megan Smith, is out this morning with a great new piece on Massachusetts' history of mistreating disabled people. We're going to talk about this story at a future date, but I wanted you guys to know it's live now on gbhnews.org, and we hope you'll give it a read. It's a very important story. Megan Smith is our reporter. After a quick break, music with our semi-frequent music panel, GBH's James Bennett II, Berkeley's Emmett Price III, and CRB's Brian McCreath I. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Colleges in the U.S. are facing a steep challenge, one that's been brewing for 18 years.
It's known as the demographic cliff.
I'm Kirk Carapezza from GBH News.
And I'm John Marcus from the Hechinger Report. On our podcast, College Uncovered, we look at how the Great Recession not only crashed the economy, but is threatening the entire university system in America.
Subscribe and listen to College Uncovered wherever you get podcasts.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations. And Subaru of New England, the all-wheel drive 2025 Subaru Outback, is committed to keeping your loved ones safe on adventures this spring. Subaru retailer locations at SubaruofNewEngland.com. And Bay State Learning Center, a welcoming alternative to traditional schooling, committed to reimagining education as an adventure, where growth, purpose, and possibility lead the way. More at baystatelearning.org. And Boston Ballet, presenting Spring Experience, a program that showcases the range and beauty of ballet today, featuring works by Mikko Nisanen and Yuri Killian, now through May 25th at Citizens Opera House. Tickets at bostonballet.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. We're live at the library tomorrow, Live Music Friday, with Jessye DeSilva celebrating 27 years of Club Passim's Campfire Festival. And at 1 o'clock today, right after the news, Patrick Radden Keefe, who has written a couple of really important books. One, most recently, Say Nothing, made into a television thing on Hulu FX about the troubles in Northern Ireland, and Empire of Pain about the criminal Sackler family behind OxyContin. He'll join us in the studio at 1 o'clock. Boston Calling is also this weekend. So far, the forecasts say to bring a raincoat if you plan to attend. But for anyone looking for alternatives to Boston Calling or additions to Boston Calling for late spring, early summer, if there is summer, you come to the right place. Here live in Studio 3 for our quarterly music panel, Brian McCreath. He's a production director for CRB and host of CRB's Boston Symphony Orchestra broadcast. Hello there, Brian.
Hey, how you doing?
James Bennett II would be the arts and culture reporter for GBH and co-host of The Culture Show. Hey, James.
Let's lock in.
And Emmett Price III is Dean of Africana Studies at Berkeley, and much more importantly, the calmer half of the All Revved Up podcast. It is excellent to see you, Emmett. Welcome. Good to see you.
We hope you're listening, Irene.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Okay.
Great to have all three.
So let's start with you, calmer half.
By the way, I should say for listeners, if Marty, you were to say, Marty, what are your favorite two segments on the show? She would say, who's the a-hole?
Yeah.
And the music panel. Is that not?
I love.
And they're both today.
Because that's what's so wonderful about the music panel. You're not talking about some horrible thing coming out of Washington.
Exactly. Okay, sorry.
So anyway, let's start with you, Emmett. What do you got?
Well, Mohini Day is a young bass player out of India. And she is just a phenom. She was a child prodigy. Her father was a session musician and noticed her talent at around age 2. And put a bass in her hand. Age 2? Absolutely.
Oh, my God.
Put a bass in her hand at age 9, and she's been going all along. She's played with Steve Vai, Zakir Hussain, A.R. Rahman, Willow Smith. I mean, she goes across genres. And let's listen to a little bit of her. This is her on bass.
Your ear just goes straight to that bass.
I can't. What else is there?
Yeah.
Forbes India has her as the most successful musician under 30.
Wow.
She's 29 years old now.
Jeez.
And she's
how many women bass players are there in India?
And also
by the way?
India,
of all places, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's one of these stories talks about the male-dominated music industry in India, right?
I mean, she is a phenom, and she's a social media influencer too. I mean, you go on any of the platforms, she's all over the place. All of the guys, all of the music guys around the world are following her around and trying to play just like her. It's so awesome. She's at the Regatta Bar on June 20th here at the Charles Hotel. Got to see her.
That's
now,
a
hold
great
on for
play.
1 second. I feel bad. My 3-year-old grandchild is already behind since this kid show talent at 2. Do we have any idea what the kid did at 2?
Probably rhythm. When my
Okay.
son was able to sit up, I would take out all the pots and pans out of the kitchen cabinet and give him the wooden spoons. And he just graduated Berklee College of Music.
There you go.
Okay. There you go.
Let those
Thank you
kids
for that.
bang out.
Yeah, thank you for the tip.
Don't stop them.
Okay, let's go to where are we going to go next? We're going to go to James.
Yeah, let's
hey,
do
James.
Hey, all
James.
right. Hi.
Hi.
So, a couple things. First up, I am particularly excited for the Newport festivals coming up. Not Newport Folk or Newport Jazz, but just Newport festivals, which is their more classical offering. And one of those that runs from July 4 to July 21. But on July 11th, the Gesualdo 6 will be performing. Now, I am a sucker for madrigals and motets, antiphons, any other kind of maybe.
Get out of here, James.
Oh,
you
would never know.
I wouldn't imagine.
Well, I have a question. What are those things? And then I'll tell you if I'm a sucker for them too. What are they?
You are
already.
Okay.
Trust me, Jim.
Let's just simply say some medieval to Renaissance small ensemble vocal music.
Oh, I do. He's right. I totally love it. I do.
I told you.
I totally love it.
The Gesualdo 6 British group, they're coming down to Newport. Now, I don't exactly know what they will program, but the preview notes state that it will be inspired by Compline. And if you don't know what Compline is, it's one of the offices of prayer. It's said at the end of the day, at nighttime. So now I'm thinking, what could they possibly give us? And the Six, they have recorded some night music on an album featuring Carlo Gesualdo, their namesakes, Tenebrae Responses from Maundy Thursday, a service where the lights gradually dim, and Thomas Tallis, his setting of the Lamentations of Jeremiah, also traditionally sung during Holy Week in one of those very reverent, dark services in darkness. So let's take a listen to some of that lamentation setting.
Oh my God.
Imagine listening to this at the Breakers.
Yeah.
And you know what's nuts about this, what we're listening to right now? What they're saying, incipit lamentatio Jeremiah prophete. My Latin's not the greatest.
Now, James, I'm impressed, man.
All they're singing is all they're singing is, "Here begin the lamentations of the prophet Jeremiah." There's none of the poetry, nothing particularly profound. Just the opening phrase, that begins the actual music proper. So this is just the introduction. It's so simple, textually, and it's amazing how rich you can make that.
I could listen to this all day.
Are these a bunch of monks?
No, some guys from the UK, I suppose.
Oh my God!
I've watched them this morning. They're like regular guys.
Is the Compline thing in the middle of the night, or is it like the one that's 2:00 in the morning or something, or is it like 7:00 at night?
That's a good question. I think it's I guess like middle of the night before midnight.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
and
another thing about Newport has they've actually done a little rebranding, so now they're known as Newport Classical.
Oh, okay.
And we've got a broadcast that we just did. My colleague Kendall Todd produced a fantastic broadcast where they interviewed Trevor Neal, who is the artistic director down there. He harkens back to his introduction to the Newport Festival in 2017 when he was the first black musician to perform there. Wow. And he has transformed that organization, along with the board and the leadership. They have gone beyond what they used to do, string quartets and piano soloists and string trios playing Russian and German music. They do all this stuff now, like Gesualdo's Six. They've got Third Coast percussion coming in. It's a really amazing festival now, all at the mansions down there.
Oh, nice.
Right? And they've also made a big effort to broaden out into the community so it doesn't have that sort of exclusive shishi kind of feel. It's a really, really vibrant festival down in Newport.
Now, Brian, before you do your things, someone, I don't know who this is, Reverend Irene texted. She says, "Jim, Marjorie, and Emmett, I am listening, and retribution will be on the next guest. Please tell Emmett, quote," this is a quote in the text, "Oh, so that's what you sound like without me." That would be Reverend Irene.
Okay.
Brian, take it away. Brian McCreath.
I just want to say real quick, fact check.
sorry.
Compline is, I just checked, around 7-ish, which I guess is the end of the day if you're a monk. What are you doing at 10 at night?
Okay, that's right. You're in bed.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful,
evening,
early evening service that kind of like, it's such a beautiful service in the church. Anyway, but I'll go on.
Go ahead, Brian.
So, the World Cup's coming here next year. Did you hear that?
I heard that,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. But something almost as great is coming to Boston, and it does every 2 years, which is almost kind of similar, that the best from around the world come for the Boston Early Music Festival. And that's going to come up in early June. And so there's so many events that there's no way we can even talk about them all, but amazing performers from all over the world. The Tallis Scholars is among them, another great British vocal ensemble. Vox Luminis, a vocal ensemble from Belgium, is coming. They do a centerpiece opera, which is extravagant and always an opera that nobody's ever heard before, which is really exciting. There's so much discovery. So what I'm going to just play for you now is a little bit of the Boston Early Music Festival Orchestra with Vox Luminis from the last festival. Let's cue up a little bit of that right now. This is from Handel's Ode to St. Cecilia, and it's just this vibrant, fun, beautiful, rich sound that they do in Jordan Hall. Every festival, while the orchestra is mostly involved in playing for the opera, they take one night out of the festival to come to Jordan Hall and do a concert like this on stage. And this year, I love this. This is Handel right here. Oh, man, brilliant stuff. But this year, the Early Music Festival Orchestra is going to do a performance of Handel's Water Music and Telemon's water music with Baroque dancers.
Will there be a water slide?
There might be a water slide.
The people deserve to know.
Jordan Hall is ideally situated for a water slide. We need to tell NEC about this, right? But
you know what the other great thing about Jordan Hall is? If you get there early, there's single seats next to nobody.
They sure are.
It's one of the best
You love that,
things.
don't you, Jim?
I love it.
But listen, I want people to go
Meaning
here.
they're not in a row, Marjorie.
So you're sitting by yourself?
You're literally
Exactly,
on this little place by yourself. It's
great.
such a funny little hall, but it's a
Okay.
beautiful hall.
Anti-social, line
and
up.
it's where a lot of the early music festival concerts happen, along with at Emmanuel Church and Cutler Majestic Theater. It's the city is swamped with early music during that week, and I hope that people will go to many of the concerts, but certainly that early music festival orchestra concert will be a highlight, and that is on. Wait for it. It's on Thursday, June 12th.
Great.
So you just look up Boston Early Music Festival and we'll give you all the scoop.
BEMF.org.
BEMF.org.
And you'll find so many events and activities. You'll be overwhelmed, honestly. But it's almost like the World Cup is coming to Boston, but it's early music.
We're joined by Brian McCreath, James Bennett II, Emmett Price III for our quarterly music panel. Emmett.
The Charles River Jazz Festival. July 12th at Hertner Park Amphitheater, which is on Soldiers Field Road, which is, of course, off of Charles River. This organization has been around since 2021. The organization is actually called the Boston Jazz Foundation and founded by Saba Molnar and a number of local musicians who, in the absence of the old Beantown Jazz Festival, made sure that Boston has a renowned festival of jazz music. And they started in 2021, and this year, 2025, they are bringing in more national talent than they ever have before. So Keon Harold, trumpeter, phenomenal, is playing. Freelance. Christian Sands, a phenomenal keyboardist. And so many others, including the Berklee Institute of Jazz and Gender Justice. Let's listen to Keon Harold's Don't Lie from his 2024 NPR Tiny Desk concert. We're supporting NPR here by doing this.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Who's that trumpet player? Keon Harold. Good. Beautiful tone, beautiful sound.
With the music today,
it's a broad sound. That's a wide sound.
Yeah. And being in the Tiny Desk studio, it almost like every time someone steps in, it almost just elevates that sound, but also makes it more intimate at the same time. I feel I'm right there.
Yeah,
it sounds so good.
What Tiny Desk is, who don't know.
Well, NPR has this international competition for top shelf artists as well as upcoming artists to get a spot to do a concert in their studio. And it's a very small space, probably no bigger than this space. And you'll have groups that have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 people in there with background singers, and they perform to the staff who are there, but it's all recorded, and then it's launched every week. On the social media platforms, and it's a go-to. It's an absolute
By the
go-to.
way, some are lesser knowns, but Taylor Swift is done
That's cool.
too.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
That's true.
It is fabulous, and the venue it's spectacular. Okay, James.
Okay, so Rapper Stop is playing at Royale on June 15th, and together with No ID, they're responsible for one of my favorite albums this year, which is aptly titled From the Private Collection of Saba and No ID. And so I don't know if No ID is going to be present at this concert, but the tour is called the Big Picture Tour, which is also the name of a song on the album. So even if the producer is not there, I'm thinking that we will probably get some music from this recent drop, like this record, Acts 1.5 or 1.5. I don't know. Let's take a listen.
The FCC version.
We
call this clean.
It's funny, we were pulling these clips, and I was like, it's a relatively clean song, and I think, was like, nah. I love listening to No ID's beats. I love how he kind of, will bring in. I love horns as well.
Yeah.
Like, I need that in my music, and I love that he finds a way to sneak them in. I also just love the wordplay too. There's a bit in there. I've been slept on and stepped over and less noticed, stepping up to bat like the Mets at a Met Gala. Love it.
Right, yeah, very good.
And it's incredible. And I always feel when producers are listed alongside the featured artist as an official collaborator and not whatever song produced by so and so, it's almost like you're going to be in for a good listen. Like Gnarls Barkley or like Eric B. and Rakim, No Worries, which we talked about on the last music panel. Named artist producer duo. So yeah, I don't know. That's Royale on June 15th, and nice. I'm psyched.
What's the hat, by the way?
Okay, this hat is the the Brooklyn Cyclones. Who
are the Brooklyn Cyclones?
Oh, they're the minor league affiliate of one New York Mets. New York Metropolitans, if you will.
The Brooklyn Cyclones?
Where did they play in Brooklyn, obviously?
Yeah, Maimonides Park in Coney Island.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And James also got a GBH jacket on, Jim. Do we get one of those GBH
They don't
jackets?
give them those. Sorry. I don't know if it's a message.
Nice.
This is an onboarding fleece. So,
Nice.
Okay.
Brian
Brian,
McCreath,
what do you got?
next.
Hey, we're going up north to Rockport because the beautiful Shalindu Performance Center up there hosting the Rockport Chamber Music Festival, which, let's see, the dates of that are June 13th to July 13th. I'm going to focus on a concert here on June 29th. Let's kick off the music for this. This is Mendelssohn. This is the Mendelssohn Octet that is going to be part of this program on June 29th, but it's going to be played by A Far Cry, the chamber orchestra. So when I say octet, usually this is 8 solo string players. They're going to do it for chamber orchestra, fuller texture. Unbelievably exciting piece. I love this piece of music. But what I really love is this program where A Far Cry is going to collaborate with Jeremy Eichler.
Oh, wow.
He's the former from the Globe who wrote, frankly, one of the most brilliant books I've ever read. Not just about music, but about anything. It's called Time's Echo. Wow. It's a little much to get into here, but basically what Jeremy does is put forth the idea that music is the only vessel that can hold certain memories for us. Oh. And so he talks about these World War II era pieces that hold the memory of things that can't be held any other way. They include Shostakovich's 13th Symphony and the Britain War Requiem. It's a very conceptual but very brilliant work. So what he's going to do with A Far Cry is something along these lines. The title of the thing is called The Dreams and Requiems of German Music. And we think about German music, or we think about German civilization as the Garden of Eden for so much philosophy and ideas and arts, and also the dark history of Germany. And I think this is what Jeremy and A Far Cry are going to get into, because they're talking about, they're going to be playing music from Bach, his Chaconne from the second partita, which is this heart-wrenching piece, unbelievably emotional piece. This piece that you just heard by Mendelssohn being a Jewish composer in early 19th century Germany, who then had to sort of, for lack of a better way of putting it, pass as Christian for his career. And then they get into Richard Strauss's Metamorphosen, which is again a heart-wrenching piece that came at the end of World War II. Jeremy Eichler is one of the most brilliant thinkers about music that I know, and his book I can't recommend highly enough, but this is a way of entering into that world with performance in a beautiful space with stellar performers.
How do you say Strauss's first name?
Richard.
You could say, you've been saying Richard this whole time, Jim.
Actually, only for about 60 years. A couple of weeks. Whoops. Okay.
Hey, it's all cool. I don't think he's complaining.
What was the heart-wrenching Bach you mentioned?
There's a piece that he wrote. It's the Partita No. 2 for solo violin.
Okay.
The last movement of it is called a chaconne, which is really just a dance form. But what Bach did with this chaconne is he created one of the most intensely emotional works. It's so hard to describe. There's a lot of theory that he wrote this in mourning for his wife, who died when he was out of town. So he leaves to go to Italy with his sort of patron, this prince. They come back to where they were living at the time. His wife has been dead and buried for 3 weeks. And this partita, which is really just a series of dance movements, he turns into an epic, like cosmically painful and yet still consoling piece of music. That's the chaconne from the Partita No. 2. Okay. That's part of this program. I don't know, they may be doing an orchestral version of it, or there may be one player doing it. I don't really know. But at any rate, the Bach, the Mendelssohn, and the Strauss on this program. There's probably more music too, along with Jeremy's comments and sort of walk through the stories of memory, music, German civilization. It's just going to be this incredibly rich night that on June 29th.
Let the record show I pulled up the sheet music for that Bach and almost wanted to sing along just to give some flavor to what you're saying, but I opted not to. But
there's an amazing version of that.
Do you sing, James?
To myself.
Oh, okay.
Quite well to myself, but
Okay.
passively to others.
Okay.
Sings with the Brooklyn Cyclones, actually. So, round 3 would be started by Emmett Price III.
All right, we're going to Symphony Hall June 7th for the Boston Pops Gospel Night.
Yes! Actually, Keith Lockhart mentioned this the other day when he was with us.
This is such a fun night.
I mean, Tamala and David Mann are absolutely phenomenal. We first met them with Kirk Franklin and the Family, one of Kirk Franklin's early groups back in the early 90s. And then they were actually cast in probably just about all of Tyler Perry's stage plays. Before he was doing the movies, when he was doing the kind of Chitlin Circuit plays and traveling around to different church basements and all that kind of stuff. And then once he made it big with the Medea film series, they were still cast. David Mann was always Mr. Brown. And from there, they both had their own recording careers, had their own production company, had their own podcast. And, I mean, they are absolutely amazing. Tamala Mann has continued with her recording career. And this is her Take Me to the King, which was her 2012 hit that she's still singing all over the place and everybody loves it. Let's listen to a bit of that.
Will I stand in your presence till my knees will I fall?
This is from her 2023 NPR Tiny Desk performance.
But now imagine that with the Boston Pops Gospel Choir, Charles Floyd backing them up.
And
this is going to be so fun.
This is one of the first times that the headliners actually sing with the community choir.
Nice.
Because usually it's, first half community choir and the headliners come out and do their thing. But they're going to bring them together this year, which is absolutely phenomenal.
Elevate that community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Listen to her.
So excited.
The spirit in the hall for those gospel night concerts is unreal. Unreal.
June 7th?
June 7th, Symphony Hall.
And this is the Pops that does it with him?
Boston Pops, yeah.
Okay. That's a good night to go to the Pops.
Oh. Wow. Okay, James.
All right. So this is going to be a little bit tricky to describe because it's my first time ever trying to describe this music on air. But June 28th at Roadrunner, we have Godspeed You! Black Emperor. And these Montrealers are, I don't know is it post-rock? Is it political vibe-out music? I've never been to a show, and I really wonder what it will be like. And so I can't wait to actually listen to some of this music now. This is a song called Raindrops Cast in Lead from their album No Title as of 13 February 2024. Well, 28,340 dead. And that number, 28,340, was the number of dead reported by the Gaza Health Ministry as of 13th February 2024. And so the music, it's so texturally varied. It's sprawling. It's, they have these insane, crescendos to this kind of sonic explosion. Let's just take a listen to some of this music. It was really hard to pick out one little snippet because it can be so all over the place. But let's just listen in. Kind of a black box musically for me, but I'm keen to check it out.
Raindrops Cast in Lead.
Yeah.
These are the chills.
Really, with the meaning of that title behind it too.
Wow. That sounds incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Brian McCreath.
Hey, all right. We're going to go a little further. It takes a bus ride at least, maybe a car ride out to Tanglewood. But there is a whole season coming up at Tanglewood.
Yes.
And the Boston Symphony, Andres Nelson's doing all kinds of things between July 5th and August 24th. But what I want to focus on, one of the things I'm really looking forward to at Tanglewood, is this production on July 11th of Romeo and Juliet. And Bill Barclay who has, do you know Bill?
I do.
Yeah. He's this brilliant theater director, producer who used to work at Shakespeare's Globe in London.
Oh,
and
wow.
he produced the Midsummer Night's Dream that the BSO did. They took Mendelssohn's incidental music and he built the play around it. He adapted the play so that the orchestra played this incidental music, brilliant music by Mendelssohn, as the play sort of like made its way through with actors, sets, everything. He did Peer Gynt by Edvard Grieg, the piece that was brilliant at Symphony Hall. Now he's going to do a Romeo and Juliet adaptation.
Wait a second, it's not Edward Grieg? Is that what you're telling me?
Okay, I'm sorry to say. I'm sorry. I know. So it's okay.
It's not Wagner either.
I learned 3 things today. Then
William Shakespeare. William
No, I much appreciate your kindness.
I'm here for you. I'm here for you every
Good.
step of the way. But let's listen to a little of the music that's going to go with this. It's what he's doing is he's adapting the ballet score that Sergei Prokofiev wrote for Romeo and Juliet, which is some of the most lush, most beautiful. This particular cut that we've got is of the love dance between Romeo and Juliet, and it is some of the most beautiful music that we're not quite hearing yet, but we're hoping to any second now.
Should I have the score?
Why don't you, if you have that score with you,
Here it is.
Oh, there it is. There it is. So it calls for a big orchestra, a lush string section.
Is Andres doing this?
Andres is doing this. And the thing about Bill, in fact, you know what? Bill did a program with Gesualdo Six.
Oh, really?
That was called Hidden Bird. William Byrd.
Oh, okay. I was BYRD.
BYRD, which was all about the way that Byrd, writing in Elizabethan times, wrote Catholic devotional music in a time when you could get killed for being Catholic.
Yeah.
And so Hidden Bird was his program where the Gesualdo Six did this thing where they were basically like acting out a house liturgy because you had to do these things in secret.
Whoa.
And then they would sing the music of William Byrd. Anyway, he's brilliant.
I hate to correct you, by the way. It's Wilhelm Byrd. I want to
Thank you, Jim. You probably looked that up on Wikipedia just now. But no, Romeo and Juliet with Bill Barclay running the show at Tanglewood, with actors, with scenery, with BSO, with Andres Nelsons, to the music of Prokofiev is going to be one of the highlights.
Last time, can I just answer the question?
When is that again?
That's July 11th.
Okay.
That's the beginning of week 2 at
the most recent conversation we had with Andres was with us at the library several weeks ago.
Yeah.
I'm still stunned how many people have not been to Tanglewood who were within the sound of our voice here. It is, I've said this before, when you are outside in the shed, particularly if it's raining, and you hear this live music and the rain is coming down, it is about the most beautiful setting that one can possibly imagine.
On Sunday afternoons when it's sunny outside and the birds are sitting up in the rafters of the shed and they're singing along to the music.
I know.
You know what the only better thing was? I went to the James Taylor July 4th thing a couple of years ago, and during the intermission, these 80-year-old women rushed the stage. I'm not kidding. And he was so good to everybody. It was fabulous. You three, this was a stellar ninesome of music. These were all great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Always a pleasure.
I have my whole summer planned now. Thank you.
Good. That's terrific. Thanks so
We've been
much.
speaking with Brian McCreath, who's production director for CRB, James Bennett II, arts and culture reporter for GBH, co-host of The Culture Show, Emmett Price III, Dean of Africana Studies at Berkeley, and co-host of the All Revved Up podcast with Irene Monroe. Coming up after 1 o'clock news, the only New Yorker writer with a J. Crew modeling gig to his name, Dorchester's own Patrick Radden Keefe joins us in Studio 3. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Unlock all NPR Plus podcasts by supporting GBH and enjoy exclusive perks like the Sunday Puzzle Podcast, early access, and bonus episodes from some of your favorite shows. Learn more at gbh.org/NPR Plus.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Cambridge School of Culinary Arts in Porter Square, offering private cooking events for your next team-building activity, family reunion, birthday party, or night out. You can learn more at cambridgeculinary.com. And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on Hour 3 of BPR. Patrick Radden Keefe joins us in Studio 3. His 2018 book, Say Nothing About Northern Ireland's Troubles, was made into a smash hit on Hulu. He's also a contributing investigative reporter to The New Yorker. Talk about the Trump administration's attacks on the free press and check in on the latest with the Sackler family. Those are the people behind OxyContin, which killed tens of thousands. They're featured in his terrific book, Empire of Pain.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then it's Thursday. Am I the a-hole day? Today's prompt is about checkout line etiquette at the grocery store. If you're ahead of someone in line and you realize you forgot an item or two and run through the store to go find it, are you still entitled to keep your spot in line? Or is the person behind you free to take your place? Weigh in next on the third hour of Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. An investigation is underway into last night's fatal shooting outside a Capitol Jewish Museum event in Washington, D.C. A young couple who worked for the Israeli embassy were killed. Attorney General Pam Bondi says security's been increased at the site of the attack.
Our U.S. Marshals are working hand in hand to make sure the embassy is safe, our ambassador is safe. And again, please know, everything we know now, he acted alone. From everything we know now, this is an ongoing investigation. But you know, whether you're Jewish or not, be vigilant.
Authorities say that after the shooting, the detained gunman repeated, "Free Palestine." A coalition of unions, nonprofits, and local governments is back in federal court this hour, seeking a further pause on President Trump's sweeping overhaul of the federal government. Meanwhile, the administration says the court erred in ordering a pause in the first place. More from NPR's Andrea Shue.
2 weeks ago, U.S. District Judge Susan Ilston ordered federal agencies to temporarily halt their reorganization plans, including issuing new layoff notices. Agencies had been preparing to shutter offices and lay off thousands of employees in response to an executive order President Trump signed back in February. Judge Ilston found Trump could not undertake such a radical transformation of government without approval from Congress. The Trump administration has argued he merely told agencies to use their own lawful authorities to accomplish his policy goals. The administration has already asked the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals to allow his executive order to go forward. Andrea Shue, NPR News.
A deadlock. U.S. Supreme Court effectively blocked the creation of the nation's first religious charter school in Oklahoma, leaving in place a state Supreme Court ruling that declared the school violated the constitutional separation of church and state. The vote was 4-4, and the order did not specify which justice voted which way. Justice Amy Coney Barrett had recused herself from the case. Several days after a human rights activist was picked up by authorities in El Salvador, the State Department says it was aware Ruth Lopez was arrested, but the statement did not criticize the government in this case. Here's NPR's Michelle Kellerman.
We refer you to the government of El Salvador and their authorities. That's how the State Department responded 3 days after NPR asked about the arrest of Ruth Lopez. Lopez leads the anti-corruption and justice program for a human rights group called Cristoso, and she's an outspoken critic of Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele. Secretary of State Marco Rubio calls Bukele a friend in hearings on Capitol Hill this week. Rubio brushed off concerns by lawmakers that the U.S. is deporting people to be jailed in El Salvador's mega prisons without due process and defended U.S. security aid to El Salvador. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
It's NPR.
Good afternoon with the latest from the GBH newsroom in Boston. I'm Craig Lamolt. The nor'easter hitting the region today is bringing plenty of rain. Matthew Belk is a meteorologist with the National Weather Service.
We're looking at storm total rainfall of 1 to 2 inches generally across southern New England.
a few locations, especially towards the east coast of Massachusetts, which would include the Cape and Islands, could approach 3 inches in spots.
A coastal flood advisory will be in effect this afternoon from 4 to 7. Up to a half foot of inundation above ground level is expected in low-lying areas near shorelines and tidal waterways. Thousands of people with disabilities who lived and died in state institutions are buried in unmarked graves in deteriorating cemeteries, and many of their families don't know where they're buried. That's a finding in a new report from the Massachusetts Special Commission on State Institutions. A 2-year investigation looked at the history of institutions for residents with mental, intellectual, and developmental disabilities. It found the state has put up too many barriers to accessing records. Alex Green is a disability scholar and vice chair of the commission.
Even when institutions that warehoused thousands of people have closed, they have left behind open wounds that the state is keeping open by denying people the access and right to the stories about their loved ones.
In a statement, the Healy administration acknowledged the disturbing history around state institutions and says it's looking forward to reviewing the commission's report. Rain today, some thunderstorms, high not quite reaching 50. More rain tonight and looks like showers likely Friday morning, becoming cloudy with a high tomorrow in the mid-50s. This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Made in Cookware. Made in Cookware is crafted by chefs for use in restaurants and home kitchens around the world. Their cookware can be found at madeincookware.com. This is NPR.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. A couple of programming notes. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with Live Music Friday from Jessye DeSilva, celebrating 27 years of Club Passim's Cambridge Festival. Hello again, Jim.
And were you going to say that Michelle Wu is going to join us for an hour on Wednesday of next week at the library? She was.
Yeah.
But we're joined now in Studio 3 by Patrick Radden Keefe, investigative journalist with The New Yorker, author of the 2021 book with which I was obsessed, Empire of Pain, The Secret History of the Sackler Dynasty. His 2018 bestseller, Say Nothing, A True Story of Murder and Memory in Northern Ireland, as you know, was adapted in a limited series drama, Say Nothing, on Hulu, FX, whatever. In any case, here's a little piece from the trailer for Say Nothing.
My mother and father were both proud members of the Irish Republican Army.
Have I told you girls how to make explosives?
It was quite a happy childhood. We were Catholic. It was a segregated society. Everything went to the Protestants. We thought joining the IRA was the noblest thing a person could do.
I love that clip. And most important to us, he's a Dorchester boy. Patrick, it's good to see you again. Welcome back.
Great to be with you.
Well, I was going to ask you what you were going to say at the Newman School where you're giving the commencement address tomorrow, but maybe you haven't formulated your ideas.
I gotta go back and figure that out this
but
afternoon.
you are giving the commencement there tomorrow. So let's talk about Say Nothing, because the book was amazing and the show was amazing. I mean, all my kids even did both the book and the movie.
Oh, wow.
To give people a sense of what Say Nothing was about.
So it started for me in 2013. I read an obituary in the New York Times of a woman I'd never heard of named Dolores Price, who was the first woman to join the IRA as a kind of full frontline soldier. Women had been involved up to that point, but not carrying guns and planning operations. She joined with her sister in the early 1970s. And when she died in 2013, I read this obituary, and she just had a fascinating life. She had bombed London. She'd come from this radical IRA family. She was imprisoned in Brixton Prison. She went on hunger strike long before Bobby Sands and the other men did. She went on this very notable hunger strike in 1973. And the thing that was most interesting to me was that when she finally, in middle age, was kind of looking back after the peace process, she had all these misgivings about things she'd done when she was young. And she took part in this secret oral history project at Boston College, talking about the things she'd done. And so...
The Belfast Project.
The Belfast Project, yeah, exactly. And... talking about some pretty horrendous things that she'd been involved in, and saying that the person who gave her the orders to do that stuff was Gerry Adams, was the guy who was one of the architects of the peace. And so that became this book, Say Nothing, and then we spent the last 5 years turning it into a series.
Just one thing about, because I've had fights with my family and fights with friends about this, you pretty much show that Gerry Adams is up to his eyeballs in the IRA bad parts, not just the political part.
Yeah, I mean, if Jerry Adams were here with us today, he would sort of very sternly tell you that he was never in the IRA, that this is all big misunderstanding. I think the book pretty carefully substantiates that he was, but also that he was the visionary guy who was able to kind of see around the corner and see this thing cannot end. It's not going to end in a military defeat in which we drive the British into the sea. We need to come up with a political settlement. So I think the book, paints him in a pretty ambivalent light in the sense that he did take part in a lot of pretty bad stuff early on, but then also he was an indispensable figure in ending that conflict and bringing about the peace.
So, Patrick Radden Keefe, when Marjorie announced at the end of the show yesterday you were coming, we've gotten more than a few texts saying there is a strong analogy between what you described and what's happening in Gaza right now. Do you buy that?
I do and I don't. I mean, if you go to West Belfast today, you will see Palestinian flags hanging along with the Irish tricolor. There's always been a very strong sense between a kind of sense of solidarity between Irish Catholics in the north and the Palestinians, a sense that we too are an occupied people. Interestingly, if you go to East Belfast, to hardcore unionist neighborhoods, you'll see Israeli flags. I think not because they feel any particular affinity for Israel, just because it's like the enemy of my enemy, And I think that there absolutely are parallels if you look at the idea of these kind of long, grinding conflicts in which there is one very dominant party that has a lot of the advantages, and that the conflict becomes very dirty. I'd be a little reluctant to draw any analogies that feel too glib. I will say when I was writing the book and making the series, Gaza was very far from my mind. I wasn't really thinking about it in those terms, but part of the interesting thing about creating something like this and putting it out into the world is that people are able to it becomes a prism and people can read their own experience. And so this is very true in the Gaza context. It was true actually even just, young people thinking about people going out and protesting on the streets, militarized police cracking down. Some of these scenes that you see in Belfast in the early 1970s, you see in American streets today.
One parallel, though, that I think you will agree exists, because I'm pretty sure I heard you say it when you were with our colleague Jared down the hall a few months ago when the TV series came out, is I think you talked about the pre-Troubles Northern Ireland and what was going on there, comparing that to the America of today. Did I get that right? Is my memory good?
Well, I mean, just in the sense that the thing that was so interesting for me as an outsider, kind of immersing myself in the Troubles, and I did grow up in Dorchester. I grew up in a lot of Irish Americans around me growing up. I had a kind of sense that I should know and understand the Troubles. I didn't really understand the conflict until I started looking into it for this book. And part of what's fascinating is you did have this very tense society where there are these deep, deep ideological and kind of cultural divisions. People don't seem to see eye to eye. The thing that's crazy about Northern Ireland is that's what it looked like in 1969. Like in 1969, it looked probably pretty, there's aspects of it that would look familiar to us today. And then in 3 years, it just completely hops the rails and people are killing each other in the streets by 1972. Now, I don't think that's where we're going. I hope that we're not, but I do think there are ways in which it can be a kind of cautionary tale. And I should say in the Gaza context, the Troubles went on for 30 years and nobody thought they would end, and they ended. And it's a very cold peace, but the peace has endured.
By the way, for people that have forgotten about this, remind them, as you mentioned, the interviews that were kept up at Boston College. People gave those interviews expecting they were not going to be released until they were dead, I think. Wasn't that it?
That was the deal, wasn't it?
That was the deal.
Yes.
And then what happened, and was that good or bad?
Yeah, so this was, I think, not a great moment for BC. And a lot of BC people have gotten in touch with me since the book came out privately to agree with that assessment. Basically, there was this secret archive, the only way in which they could get these people. So this is actually combatants from both sides. You had loyalist paramilitaries as well to come in and give these interviews, which they said, we won't release them until after you're dead. But the agreement that they got people to sign was never carefully vetted by a lawyer. And so there was never a little clause in there that said, to the extent that we can do so under U.S. law. So what happens if you get a subpoena? And there was also an ambiguity, I mean, it's crazy to say it, about does that mean when all of us are dead? Or when the first person dies, we start releasing the tapes? And so word filtered out that there was this archive at BC with all of this stuff in it, all these IRA people talking about things they'd done. And the authorities in Northern Ireland, who still really have it out for Gerry Adams, they got a mutual assistance, legal assistance treaty subpoena of BC, and BC folded, I think, pretty quickly.
Yeah. I happened to be there when he was in jail. It was all the time he was. What was he? 3 days, 4 days?
Yeah, just a few days.
They pulled him in, and
you were in Ireland when that happened. When he was in jail?
I told you that.
I forgot.
Yeah, and it was at the leading of the news every single solitary night. I mean, it was all everybody talked about the whole time.
So, Patrick Radden Keefe, can we talk about Empire of Pain for a couple of seconds?
Sure.
We have Governor Healy, and then Attorney General Healy spends an hour with us every month taking questions. She talked about, and I'm 90% sure you did in your book too, but the fact she was the first one to go after the Sacklers in their individual capacity, but in civilly. And the question we have asked her and virtually every law enforcement person we've ever interviewed in which the Sackler name came up, why were they never criminally prosecuted in your estimation?
I think those, a couple of reasons. One is that I think that there's an element of, I'm afraid, a kind of element of the sort of professional class of prosecutors, be they state or federal, which is that they are really obsessed with their statistics. They want to lose. They don't want to lose. And I should say some of that is that they have a huge power, right? And you don't want to willy-nilly go off charging people with things unless you think you have a high probability of success. These are hard cases to bring because you need to show a kind of degree of command and control on the part of the family. Could they prevail? Maybe they could. I certainly think if you read my book, it's pretty heavily documented, and there's a lot of illustrations of members of the Sackler family being aware of what was going on and calling the shots inside the company.
How do you feel about, I think most people know, even if you're only following this casually, the original deal that was struck with them, which gave them personal immunity, even though they hadn't filed for bankruptcy individually. I think they only filed from the company, from Purdue Pharma, was rejected by the Supreme Court. There's a new one. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's still pending and needs court approval, which, while it wouldn't give them immunity, my understanding is it also, while they added $1 billion or something to it, $800 million would go to a legal, it's so perverse, I had to read this a few times, $800 million of their own money would go to a legal defense fund set up in the States for them to defend themselves. I mean, what do you make of the settlement this round?
Well, I think, it's been fascinating. There's a history with the Sacklers going back 2 decades where you'd get these communities, and this would be true in Boston and the surrounding area. It's true really every corner of this country. You get these communities that were hit very, very hard by the opioid crisis, by OxyContin, by heroin, by fentanyl. And I get into this in the book in more detail, but there's, on the one hand, the Sackler family aren't out there selling fentanyl on the streets. On the other hand, you can draw a line between the addiction crisis caused by OxyContin and people who are buying fentanyl today. So you have all these communities that are very hard hit. And what would happen is the Sacklers and Purdue would essentially come and they'd offer them peanuts. They'd say, well, literally there were cases where they'd say, we'll pay you $10 million to go away. And the numbers have just grown and grown and grown, right? So initially the settlement offer was something like $3 billion. And we're now up at something in the neighborhood of $7 billion. Yeah. The issue for the Sacklers, which you can kind of understand, is we don't want to pay the big lump sum and then also have to fight litigation for the rest of our lives. Right. What we're basically doing is, in a kind of cynical way, we are buying peace of mind. And it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. Because I think that ultimately you can give them a release if you're sort of achieving enough consent from the various players, where they essentially say, listen, the number's high enough here that we're going to give them what they want. But I don't know how it's going to shake out. And these, as you say, you start to kind of get into the details of these negotiations and you feel like your head's going to explode.
Again, the book is Empire of Pain. If you haven't read it, you must.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about journalism, because you were interviewed extensively in a piece about covering Trump's second term. And I think I'm the person that you talked about when you talked about somebody dealing daily in outrage porn, in which the journalist writes, or in this case talks, with great indignation about what the Trump administration is doing, then the listener or reader consumes it and feels outrage. You communicate your outrage, but then it just burns off. I feel like I've been doing that since he was reelected. And I was doing it the first 4 years, and now we just spent the first hour of the show doing it today. So, what should we be doing?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I am wrestling with that myself. I think that the one thing I know with great conviction is the answer is not to get complacent or to run and hide.
Yeah.
I think particularly because, I don't need to tell you this, right? NPR and all the local NPR affiliates are looking down the barrel of potentially a funding emergency. CBS is, it sounds like, about to make a crazy deal, effectively a payoff. It is a scary moment for journalism. And so I think that both in terms of what's happening with the administration, but then also just in terms of the survival of this thing that we do, we all need to kind of show the courage to keep speaking out. The thing I worry about on the outrage porn thing is it used to be, I'm sure you did too. Like I grew up, I watched All the President's Men. I thought what investigative journalism is a bad thing happens. A journalist goes out there and reveals the truth. You shed light on it, and then once the truth is revealed, the bad thing stops happening. Right? The ref steps in and says enough.
Exactly.
And it is a strange moment to be in, where every day we have these bad things revealed, and then they don't change. I don't know what the answer is, but I think that it has to be that you keep, even if it's just for history, we need to keep a record and make a record of these things that are happening.
Well, I want to talk about whether we are making a record, because listeners are going to get tired of this, because I've asked this of a number of people who do what you do.
That's right. That's because we're outrage porners, Jim.
Well, we are outraged. Yeah, we are.
That's the right word.
The outrage porn business.
This all started when Ruth Marcus quits at the Washington Post, and she wrote a piece in the New Yorker, to her credit, admitting that at least in 2 columns, she had self-censored. It wasn't her word, but she had toned down her criticism, I think, of Bezos and of Trump in another one. I'm not sure, but she did say she toned it down. So within a week of having read that, we had Marty Barron on, and we had Chuck Todd, who's with us every Thursday, was here this morning, and asked them, forget editorial pages. We know about the Washington Post, LA Times, all this sort of stuff. How about reporters? Are they self-censoring, either because they've been told to by their boss, sort of like Iger talking to The View, and I know they're not real well, some of them are, tone it down in terms of Trump, or because they've decided themselves it's safer for you as an employee to tone things down. Marty Barron said, I've spoken to a lot of my former colleagues at the Washington Post. There's none of that happening. And Chuck Todd has said to us, including this morning, by the way, I've spoken to a lot of my former colleagues at NBC News and elsewhere, and they are undoubtedly toning down. So we don't even know what part of the record we're not hearing because of that self-censorship. Do you think it's going on?
I mean, I wonder if it's a helpful point to make that the first one you talked to was a newspaper journalist, and the second one was a television journalist.
Excellent point.
Marjorie would say that too, by the way, I should say.
I'm sure there is some degree of self-censorship going on, certainly not at the New Yorker among my colleagues. I think that some of this, I think part of what's scary, right, is you want to know that that the place that you're working is going to have your back. And I think that certainly for me at the New Yorker, for somebody working at the New York Times, I don't know that this would be true today of the Washington Post. There is a feeling that if you go out there and you have the facts and you kind of make the case that up and down the masthead, people are going to support you, and that's indispensable. At particularly these big TV entities that are part of these larger publicly traded companies, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what that. I look at what's happening at CBS, and I think if I worked at CBS News, I'd be horrified right now.
Well, but the Washington Post killed an editorial. The LA Times killed an editorial. They're obviously
our Senator Elizabeth Warren called what the CBS was doing bribery. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, it seems fairly. If what's happening is you're doing a payout in order to satisfy, in order to get approval for a merger in a completely different part of the, the kind of corporate ecosystem, it seems pretty dodgy to me. Sort of on its face,
also,
right?
it seems it's sort of pointless because, as you know, you're a Columbia guy, right? I mean, they went on bended knee to Trump, and I don't think they've yet got the $400 million.
Well, I think the law firms are seeing that too. The law firms that bent the knee. I mean, that you don't. This is like the oldest. Growing up in Dorchester, my father would tell me this about bullies, right? It's like
exactly.
if you don't punch the guy in the nose, he's going to come back and take your lunch money the next day. That dynamic to me seems sadly familiar. What I worry about is. To go back to the outrage porn thing, that there's so much, the meme coins, the plane, all of it, there's so much graft baked in at this point that the three of us around this table, people listening, there comes a point where you just kind of shrug and you say, oh, well, this is sort of the way of the world now, right? And it's hard for me. I'm going to be talking to these high school kids tomorrow. I talk to my own adolescent sons. My older boy was 6 years old when Trump got elected the first time, and I keep trying to explain to him. I say to him, like, you're a boiled frog. Like you don't know what it was like before. It wasn't always like this. You'd have a sense that public office. Yes, you have corruption here and there. Yes, you have people who let you down, but public office there was a kind of sense of moral aspiration to be righteous and do the right thing.
Yeah. Well, I guess we've gotten over that now. So lots of people that are your big fans are writing, number one.
We're getting texts. What are you working on?
But before that, our staff wants a J. Crew 30% discount because you're a J. Crew model. We saw you in your trench coat looking like the
I'm never going to live this down.
You shouldn't live it down.
Honestly, it's like an hour of my life. I'll be hearing about it forever.
Yeah, well, it's great. Good for you.
He's turning red, by the way, if you're not watching on YouTube as we're speaking.
But are you doing something about a teen kid that was killed in London?
I wrote a piece last year for The New Yorker. I had a kind of a crazy experience. I was making Say Nothing, actually. I was making the show in London, and I met a guy on set one day, and we started talking, and he said, I know this family who lost their son in 2019. He was a 19-year-old kid, just a teenage kid from West London, and he went off the balcony of a luxury building into the Thames. It was kind of mysterious. Nobody knew how he died or how that came to be. And after he died, his parents found out that he had a secret alter ego. He had a whole secret life. And he had been pretending that he was the son of a Russian oligarch. And so I published a story about that, and I have been spending a lot of time with that family. And that book will be out next April.
So I have one last question, because you're an expert in this, getting back to Say Nothing, having done all this reporting on it. And what do you think? I mean, the IRA did do a lot of terrible things, but they got results. So where's the...
So I would actually quibble with the idea that they got results.
Okay.
I think the IRA did a lot of terrible things, and I think that and I should say, if you read Say Nothing and if you watch the series, I mean, we've gotten some flack from people who say you're humanizing these terrorists, but of course, they're human beings, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think they were psychopaths. I think they made what they thought in the moment was a rational calculation. The really interesting thing is they never got a united Ireland, which was the stated aim.
That's true.
And I think that if and when we get there, and I think we probably will get there, certainly within my lifetime, that what'll get us there is, ironically, it'll be demographics and Brexit, and not the thousands of dead.
So you don't think they got results? That I'm ignorant of this. I thought that things were better. They're certainly better now.
They're certainly better. I think the really interesting question is, would they have gotten better without all of the violence? And I think that to me, there's a very compelling case to be made that would be so. And Dolores Price was ultimately haunted in the way that she was because they didn't get a united Ireland. So at the end, when you get the Good Friday Agreement and the 6 counties in the north remain British, she said, well, hang on a second, why did I bomb London? Like, what was I doing that for if this was the destination?
By the way, the women who played her,
the
amazing,
acting,
right?
The acting was great.
Been on
and trying to reconcile what they did toward the end of the book and the TV show.
It's powerful, isn't it?
It's hugely powerful. Yeah.
It's great to see you.
Great to see you.
Good
both.
luck tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Commencement.
Thank you.
Don't screw it up.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you got to think of something to say between now and tomorrow.
You got any ideas? Hit me up. All right.
Thank you so much, and congratulations for your great, great work. We've been speaking with New Yorker writer Patrick Radden Keefe, who's written a bunch of books. Among them is Say Nothing, a true story of murder and memory in Northern Ireland, which was made into a limited series drama for Hulu. You don't want to miss it. You can also see him in J. Crew print ads. Thank you very much. Coming up after a quick break, it is Thursday. So it's another rounded. Am I the a-hole? A woman leaves a checkout line and is furious when the other shoppers refuse to let her back in. Who's the jerk? You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Rolfe. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, a group of Cambridge voters is holding state legislators to their promise of transparency. And the aftermath of the opioid crisis in Massachusetts and a space-based drug delivery system from a Worcester biotech company highlight both the cost and innovation in our healthcare system. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from medical bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have any unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And the Boston Symphony Orchestra, announcing the 2025 season of Tanglewood, showcasing the beauty of incredible surroundings and world-class music. Tanglewood, where music goes for the summer. Tanglewood.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Prouty, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're live at the library tomorrow. You know, one of my favorite moments in every week, not every week, most weeks in the show, is when it's Thursday and it's 1:30 and the next segment is Am I the A-hole? And we have somebody who Marjorie really respects on the show. And she either tries not to tease what the next segment is because she's so humiliated, or she does what she just did with Patrick here. Yeah. She said, "Am I the jerk?"
Instead of
she changed because she was too humiliated.
Well, I was very impressed by him. He's a genius. I mean, he's a great reporter.
He's also a brilliant reporter. I mean, he's incredible.
And so I was so wowed, and I was embarrassed that my career's come to this, Jim. And you know what? When we miss Am I the A-hole on Thursday afternoon, I must get 50.
You're bereft.
I am bereft. But I get like 50 or maybe more text messages ticked off that we haven't done it.
Well, they know who we are.
That's who we are. This is what our audience says. We just got to face facts.
Okay, so we've all been there.
Outrage porn and Am I the A-hole?
This is a good one. Everybody's had this experience.
Had this. Okay.
Near the front of the checkout line at Market Basket, when you remember that one last small item that you meant to pick up and totally forgot to grab. When you leave the line to get that, let's say, bag of coffee, dish detergent, bottle of hot sauce, whatever it is, are you entitled to return to your original spot in line? That's the question at the heart of this week's edition of Am I the A-hole? The author of the original Reddit post, these are all real, well, we don't know if they're real, they're all really on Reddit, was in a self-checkout line when the woman in front of her, cart piled high, rushed out to grab more stuff. When she returned, the line had moved forward, she lost her place and threw a fit. Karma is a you-know-what. You'll be in my shoes someday, she says to the Reddit poster, who replies, no, they won't, because, quote, when I leave the line to get more items, I always go to the back when I return. So please call or text 877-301-8970. Is the line lever in the right? Should the fellow shopper have let her back into her original position? Or is there some sort of statute of limitations? Would it have made a difference, for example, if it was only 30 seconds or a minute that she was gone? Or is the line lever, expecting total strangers to cut her a break, really the a-hole here? Again, the number is 877-301-8970. I'm quite excited about this, again, because everybody has had this experience. Who's the a-hole, Marjorie? Well, on one hand, and on the other hand.
I would say this.
Go ahead.
In the original Am I the A-hole thing, it talked about this person that's complaining is also mad when people leave their children in the line to go get their stuff. Now, I have to make an exception. If this is the reason you have children, so they can stand in the line at the checkout.
In your place.
In your place, and start loading the stuff onto the...
That's good. It's not what we're talking about, but go ahead.
Well, no, it's an issue.
Well, it's an issue.
It's an issue.
Yeah.
If your kid is there, that's fine.
Why?
Because your kid can start loading the stuff that's in your...
If they're doing what they should be doing, fine. Okay, fine.
Yeah,
Forget
that's fine.
that.
But other than that, the person who leaves and expects everybody else to wait till they get back with their milk and their butter and their cream cheese is definitely the a-hole.
Oh, you're right for once here this week. I'm
thank
serious.
you, Jim.
When you leave, let me explain to you, there's no statute of limitations. You leave line. If you want to beg the person in back of you, ask them, you'd say that's all right. You know why it's not okay? Because you haven't gotten the permission of the person
Everybody
behind
else.
them and them and
If
them.
you're gonna do it-
leave the line, you lose your place.
I've done
period.
it. No, I have done it. I've
Wait,
done it.
you've left the line?
I leave the line quite frequently because I'm
Well, you do. You only forget
scatterbrained and
everything,
I forget
yeah.
everything. But I run to get it, and I run back and make sure that I'm back before there's movement in the line, Jim.
I don't buy that.
So
Teddy from North.
if you can run fast enough, it's okay.
Teddy from North Attleboro makes the same mistake I just mentioned. Teddy texts, you must communicate with the person behind you to get the okay before you leave. Teddy, I'd like you to text again. And how about my example? When there are 4 people behind the person behind you, what do you do then? And the answer is, this should not be negotiable. But I'm sorry. Unless someone, a child or a partner, is unloading the stuff, in which case there's no slowdown, you leave, you lose. Do you hear me? You leave, you lose.
No place savers in grocery store lines, says a texter, or in amusement park ride lines, period. It's the unwritten golden rule.
Wow.
Wow.
It's heavy. An anonymous texter says, no, you make a list, dummy. You snooze, you lose. She, meaning the lever of the line, is the a-hole. All 3 of us agree. 877-301-8097. Now, do you make, other than the kid exception that you described before we get to the calls, what if it turns out the person is really old? How about that?
If the person is really old,
and obviously has a memory issue.
They will probably not be able to run fast enough to get their stuff.
So you
in the
go
back
right
in
ahead
time.
of them.
You
Screw
have
them.
to go right ahead of
It's
them.
a dog-eat-dog
Just
world.
knock them right down.
Okay. Let's go to Elizabeth in Gloucester. You would start things off on MI, as Marjorie called it, the jerk. It's really the a-hole. Go ahead. Hello, Elizabeth.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree. I disagree. I think the people in line were the a-holes. I don't think it's no skin off their teeth to let the poor person in. I mean, really, we all forget stuff. Where is the niceness in the world? I mean, wouldn't you feel good if somebody was in front of you, they ran off, maybe a mother or old person, like you said, or even just a regular person, and you said, go ahead, go back in line, it's okay. They would be so grateful. They would thank you.
Okay, your
and they
question
would move
was,
ahead.
wouldn't I feel good? The answer is no, Elizabeth. I would not feel good because I'm standing there. Get out of here. Elizabeth, good try, though. It was an excellent start.
No,
Thank you
she's
for your
right.
call.
We could all
she's not
we
right.
could all be a little bit more
Thank
patient,
you, Elizabeth.
a little bit more generous, but
It's not about generosity.
That day is past. It's all over.
It's not about generosity.
It's dog eat dog.
The person who is leaving the line is behaving rudely. Would you not agree, Marjorie?
Well, maybe they'd ask permission for the person behind them.
We just went through that. That is not enough. If there's one person behind you, okay. If there are multiple
And you
people
said,
behind you,
hey, you 10 feet back. Is it okay?
you gotta go down the line. By the way, I hate to get anal about this,
Okay.
but if I may, let's assume you ask the person behind you and then you go to get whatever you forgot.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get back, there's 3 other people behind you who you hadn't asked. How about that?
I know you have to
You're
give-
being too
you have
flip
to give them
about
all
this.
a $5 tip or something like that.
Elizabeth, thanks for the call. 877-301-8970. I don't think most of these are cut and dried. I think this is cut and dried.
Okay. Let's go
yourself.
to John in Providence. What do you think, John?
Hello, John.
Hi.
Hi.
I think it's absolutely disgusting that someone would leave the line with a full carriage and then come back and go, oh, I was just gone a minute. That's my minute. I want it back.
You're a truth teller, John. You have exactly the right attitude and passion. Thank you very much for the call. Appreciate it.
Okay. Any kindergartner.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
you
for calling. Ask any kindergartner. Cutting in line is not allowed. So says a texter.
Well, they would say they're not cutting in line because they were in line, but
Mm-hmm.
they're right. They are cutting in line. Once you leave, I mean, it's so basic. You cannot what's the verb I'm looking for? Retake your position once you've surrendered your position. I mean,
Once
it's a
it's
basic
lost,
premise.
It's all over.
It's lost.
Okay.
It's lost.
Caroline and Newton, what do you think, Caroline?
Thank you, Caroline. Hi.
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 So I've
Yeah.
called a bunch of times.
Good.
So I have like sort of opinion that it depends on the situation. If I'm not in a big hurry and somebody in back of me is clearly struggling with their day and they ask me, I'm like, yeah, go ahead. It's the people that assume that like they can just come back and they don't even ask. They don't say excuse me, or they're on their phone the whole time. So
another
they're
good one.
Totally ignoring you too. But I feel like each situation is different. Also, what bugs me though are the people that go to the self-serve with like 5 bags of groceries.
Let's not even.
Because I feel like the self-serve is like a quick in and out. You know what I mean? And these people that come and they have like a ton of groceries, it really pulls up the self-serve line.
Caroline, you know what I like about you? Not only your reasoning, you've thought a lot about these issues, which I admire in a person. Caroline, thank you very much for your considered multiple opinions. We appreciate it.
Okay, this texter says you have to go to the end of the line, and here's their story. My friend always picks the longest line to stand in because his therapist said he needs to tamper down his type A personality.
Wow, that's incredible. By the way, an anonymous texter, it took us 4 minutes. Jim is the a-hole. Usually that comes much more quickly. I have nothing to do with this particular thing, but I am the a-hole, apparently.
Yeah. Okay, somebody was talking about being behind you with a bunch of stuff from the hot bar.
Now, this is not nice, but I'm going to read it anyway.
Okay.
Anonymous texter. What if Joe Biden is in the line and forgets everything? Will the mainstream media let him back? We shouldn't have read that or laughed.
God,
that was really cruel.
That was.
Okay, Marjorie made me read that. By the way.
I made you read it.
An anonymous texter says, if I'm behind a radio host who is checking out with 3.5 pounds of hot bar food, I'm not going to let him run back for a few liverwurst tubes. I have run back for a liverwurst tube more than one time.
They don't actually sell liverwurst tubes, do they?
That's what they come in.
No, they don't. They come in round things.
That's called a tube. No, not a round like sliced. Now, occasionally they're sliced. If you have the whole liverwurst experience, it's like in a tube that is sealed at both ends. And as I said to you before, you clip off one end, you put it up to your mouth, you squeeze it, and it goes right in your pie hole.
Okay.
It is really, really quite nice.
I thought that was like a joke.
No, it is. Wait, you've never bought liverwurst your whole? You don't know what it looks like.
I do. But
You've talked about, no, slice. Slice is the exception.
Home and you cut it.
Right, but what do you cut it from? A tube.
Yeah, but I didn't think you actually squeezed it out of like.
No, most people do not. I will admit that. Some of us do.
Stop.
Okay, fine. Really, mind your own.
Tyler in the car. What do you think,
Hello,
Tyler?
Tyler. How are you? Tyler, say something.
Hey, how you guys? I'm doing
good.
Excellent. Thank you.
I think it just comes down to who's being reasonable. Are they running and getting one thing of butter real quick before it's their turn?
Exactly.
Or are the cashier waiting for them to pay, and they're like, oh, hold on, I forgot 3 things. Let me run to the back of the store. I'll be back in 5 minutes.
That's right. It's a complicated situation. There are extenuating circumstances.
Wait a second. Let's take the butter circumstance that you mentioned, Tyler. If you leave for the butter and the cashier is ready for the next patron and you're not back with the butter, you blew it, right? You lost your turn. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Take the
fine.
next customer.
That's right.
And the rest of the line, they can sort it out from there. If they want to send you to the back, fine, whatever.
But you have to,
sound like a reasonable person,
you have to assess
Tyler.
the situation.
Yeah.
If you forgot the butter and you're the next person in line and behind the person whose stuff is now being run through the register, and they have like 20 items, you have time to run down and get the butter and come back.
You and Tyler agree, but I have to say, and I'm speaking to you and Tyler both, in those circumstances, you have taught the person nothing. You've taught them nothing.
Okay.
If there's not a sacrifice, a loss that is tied to your leaving the line, then you'll just do it again and again and again.
But isn't
the
the
whole
issue...
purpose is you've made a mistake.
Yep.
You attempt to fix the mistake by going and getting the product. If there's not a penalty for your mistake, every single damn time you go to the supermarket, you're going to do the same thing.
But if you are fleet of foot enough to get the butter or whatever it is and get back in time, no harm, no foul.
You know what I've done a few times?
He is moving like a tremendous
That's right.
That's right. That's Secretariat.
That's dead. But
by the way, did you see the horse that won had Secretariat
journalism? We call
Bloodstream. No, that was the one that won.
No,
before.
every single horse in the race had Secretariat. No, it's true. And you're talking about the Kentucky Derby.
Every one of them?
We discussed this on the show, and you were here. Every horse, Siring or whatever the hell
Secretariat was a busy guy.
He was really
very busy guy.
Can I tell you what you can also do, by the way, which I've done more than once? I thought I did it with you once when we ended up at the supermarket. Maybe I didn't. I occasionally turn to the person behind me, ask them to get me the thing I forgot. So you've sort of solved the problem there. Go ahead, what are you going to say?
Listen to this one. No butts, no cuts, no coconuts. My mom would do this to me and my sister. She would leave us in the line, and then it would be time to pay, and she wouldn't be back. Therefore, my mom is the a-hole.
Sarah,
That is terrible. That's traumatic for the kids.
It is. It's really
terrible.
is. Really
it's terrible. I can see why you're mad at your mother.
Sarah in Westport, hello to the show. I mean, welcome to the show, whatever that is. Hello. Hello.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
So I am a lot like Marjorie, and I am scatterbrained, and I forget things a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think that I'm the a-hole because I put everything up on the belt, and I run like the wind to go get the thing, and I come back, and they're not even done ringing me up yet.
Exactly.
So I don't think that I'm the a-hole, but if you leave and, you're not back and everybody else has to wait for you, then you're kind of the a-hole.
Wait a second.
That's
Wait
what you do.
a
You
second.
plot your
Excuse
strategy.
me. You have run back to get something after they started checking you out?
Sure, if they've got 40 things.
That is like a felony. I'm serious. What are you talking about? And if
nobody's waiting.
Nobody's waiting.
How do you know
Sarah's
the
right.
person's not going to move right behind where you were while you're running to do what you're doing?
Because they're checking out your 50 items. Cash register doesn't work that quickly.
You're okay with what Sarah's talking about?
That's what I do.
That is, you wait till you're being checked out, till you run back and get something?
I try to do it earlier, but like Sarah said, if you have like 30 items on the conveyor belt, right, you have time to run back and get the butter. You just got to make sure you're back before the person is finished checking you out. It's a routine.
And
Sarah,
let me tell you this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me tell you this. I get dirty looks, and when I'm back before they're done scanning and nobody has to wait for me, everybody kind of smiles a little bit. And I say I'm sorry.
There you go. Well, Sarah's another one who knows what she's up to.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Not with her,
you have
but
to assess the situation.
here's
Every
an
case
anonymous.
is different.
No, it's not. Here's an anonymous texter. I'm surprised you can't cut the line at the supermarket, but using the bus lane on Huntington Avenue to get everyone else ahead of everyone else is okay. Do you want to respond to that?
I have to admit, it's when there's like 40 cars in line on Huntington Avenue, you can zip right down to the bus lane. It's very,
That's okay, though,
very
right?
satisfying.
Oh, it's okay because I don't see a bus in the rearview mirror.
That's right.
And when the bus comes in the rearview mirror,
no
I'll move
bus
out,
in the
even though
bus
the
lane.
people in the regular line will not let me move back
Once again,
into the regular
you have
lane.
To plot,
so
you have to plot your strategy so you won't be in that situation, Jim. And if I drove like you drive, I wouldn't be talking.
Here's what another anonymous texter says. I think you should read the second one there. Anonymous.
I would let them back unless they're wearing a dickie.
Exactly. There's always a dickie theme. To everything we do.
One of these days you're going to wear a dickie
I'm over
to the library. That would be great.
I've worn it many a day. You just haven't noticed.
Matt from Narragansett says, whether I let them back in or not depends on the orientation of the pineapple in their cart.
You know what the problem
Why
is
that,
with
Jim?
a lot of these texters? If you don't listen to the show regularly, you're lost. Now, the pineapple, we learned this from Christopher Muther. He was on a cruise ship. If you have on your door, am I right about this?
An upside
down pineapple, it means you are a, quote, swinger.
That's right. But also you can go to the supermarket
with an upside down
pineapple and see how it goes.
And you say to the woman right behind you, the person right behind you, I'll meet you in the produce line. That's really a good pickup line.
Yes, right, between the cauliflower and the broccoli.
Exactly. Okay.
Let's go to Patrick in Boston.
Yeah,
Hi, Patrick.
exactly. Hi there.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfectly. Thank you for calling. Hello.
Awesome. Long-time listener, first-time caller. And before I say anything, my mother's probably listening. So, hi, Mom. How are you?
What's your mother's name? What's her name?
My mother's name is Mary. She's in Bedford, New Hampshire.
Hi, Mary.
She's a dedicated listener as well.
Mary, we love you. Thanks for listening. You have a wonderful son, maybe. Okay, what's up, Patrick? Go ahead.
The emphasis on the maybe.
Of course.
So I'm going to pitch an idea here. I think that we both sides of this argument need to be giving more consideration to the cashier. All right? If you look at the cashier and say, hey, I missed something. Can I run back and they say it's
Good point. Good point.
Anytime that I've gone back to go get something, I've always checked in with the cashier to make sure that they're going to be my defender when the other guys get antsy.
Yeah, but wait a second, Patrick. Patrick, I don't want to embarrass you in front of Mary, your mother.
That's all right.
But
that's all right.
Who is the cashier to be deciding for me if I'm behind you in line? Let's assume the cashier says, I'm fine with it, but I'm behind you and I'm not fine with it. How do you resolve that one?
Well, I'm a pass the buck kind of guy, I have to admit. And I've been
You're an honest person.
I've been shamed more than once for this, but I just put the responsibility on the store.
Patrick, excellent.
It was okay.
Excellent first call. Say hi to your mom for us.
We've had a couple
it.
of other texters that have said the same thing, including Margaret in Dover. She says, my strategy is to wait until I'm actually physically checking out, then ask the cashier whether I can quickly grab a forgotten item.
By the way, that is the worst thing.
This doesn't happen very much anymore because people don't pay in cash most of the time. They're giving the...
How about when someone writes a check and hasn't started to write it
in the olden
until
days,
after they get the total?
I know, it doesn't happen
Some
anymore.
people
It hasn't
write
happened
checks.
for 20 years, Jim.
Whatever.
But it used to happen all the time. Or a person is getting the pennies and the nickels out of their purse, you know what I mean? And we're all standing there. The cashier's standing there. The people, you're standing there. The people
Store
behind
closes.
you are standing there. There are about 50 people standing there staring at the person with daggers in their eyes, getting the pennies out of their purse, or if anybody does that anymore, which they don't really, write checks at the supermarket.
Occasionally they do. Susan Framingham says, Bill Belichick sends Jordan to get what he forgets. That is, they're getting married, so that's going to change. Julie from Swampscott, this is another problem. I'm so with Julie. I did it once for a woman and her kid, and look what happens to her. When she came back, she let her bratty kid take 2 minutes to pick out a candy. I swore never again. Julie, that was excellent. That was really, really excellent.
Okay, let's go to Kathy in the car. Hi, Kathy.
Hello, Kathy. Who's the a-hole?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, guys. Well, I'll say that I'm the a-hole. First of all, first-time caller, long-time listener.
Thank you a lot.
you, Kathy.
We love that, too. Thank you.
Yeah. I actually work at a grocery store.
Uh-huh.
And, I don't want to say which one because they might be listening. But
Which one? Go ahead.
It sounds a lot like Aldi. But
okay.
It sounds a lot like Aldi. But
Go ahead, Kathy.
But I will say I'm the a-hole because we have to work people through our line quite quickly.
Yeah.
And if somebody says, oh, I forgot this, and I'll be right back, I'm like, absolutely not. Pay for your stuff first, and then go grab your stuff. And if the line is long,
I'm in
I
love
can
with
tell
this
them they don't have to get back in line. They don't have to get back in line, but they can just come up to me and they can purchase that thing in between the next customers. They don't have to wait back in line, but I don't let them run off and go and grab their stuff because I've made that mistake before. And we work through our lines quite quickly. So,
Kathy, you are fabulous.
I've been called many names.
So if you let someone, in those past times when you have let someone go back and they don't return in time, there's a lot of hostility from the other customers, you're saying, Kathy, right?
There is.
Yeah.
And they're going to visit their hostility on
Kathy.
Kathy.
Have one or two lines open.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it gets to be my fault. I've been called many names because of that. And
It's
I'm
nasty.
like, hey, I didn't break you. You came in broken.
That's a good one.
Kathy, you are fabulous.
remember
Call
that.
us again. That was an
Coming
excellent
handy.
first call. I didn't break you. You are broke. You were already broken.
Almost every
I'm gonna
Trader
use that.
Joe's I've ever been to,
Yeah.
they have one line. In the front of the store or the back of the
Yeah.
store. So you don't have to choose among like
By the way,
six-
that's a topic for another day.
It should be
Line
one
management.
line.
I am 100%
Yeah.
with you. And you go to the next opening. You don't mean
'Cause
one
otherwise,
cashier.
I mean, you
you
gotta-
mean one line to get to the multiple cashiers.
That's right. Otherwise, you have to plot who's got a lot of stuff in their carriage, who's a person that might be taking pennies out of their pocketbook for like a half an hour. You have to scout it all out, and it's not. It's not
one of
easy.
our colleagues just typed us a note, and I like their thinking. They just said, that should become our motto on BPR. I didn't break you. You were already broken. How about that? Instead of what matters to you or whatever
I
it is.
think I'm
that
only
is
semi-broken. I'm not quite broken yet, but I'm on the verge.
Now, Diane, we might get into an argument with. Here it is.
Oh.
Diane from Quincy.
Oh.
Welcome to the show, Diane. Thanks
Hi,
for
Diane.
calling. Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Perfectly,
we can.
Diane. Hi.
All right, so this has happened to me so many times.
Sure.
It's so easy.
Go ahead.
I have a carriage
Yeah.
with groceries.
Yeah.
I forgot the butter.
Yeah.
I just asked the person behind me, can I just run and get some butter? And they're very nice. Yes, go. It's simple as that.
Well, no, it's not, Diane. Diane, let me pose the question I posed at the top of this segment. Let's assume it's not one person in back of you when you go to get the butter, as you call it, but there are 12 people. Don't you have to get the approval of the other 11 before you go get the butter?
No. I've done it a million times. It's happened to me many a time.
And do you always say yes when they ask you?
Sure. They know, you know where you're going. You know exactly where the butter is. You get it, you come back, you're all set. if you left the line with your carriage and decide you got to come back, that's a different story.
Let me tell you, you're another good one, Diane. I don't agree with you, but you're great.
Have you not made it back in time with the butter, Diane?
She's not telling you. Go ahead, Diane.
Look, Marjorie, I've always made it back.
There you go.
That's what she says.
She's always made it back.
Hey, Diane, if it's always the butter, why don't you just get it before you get in line?
Because I forgot it.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
That was
you have
excellent.
to run. I mean,
Diane's really
like
good,
a
actually.
breakneck
I like
pace
her.
down the aisle. Sometimes that upsets people. They wonder why you're running so fast. Maybe there's a robbery in progress
have you ever
something.
thought, let me just ask you, have you ever thought of making a list when you go to the grocery store? Has that ever occurred to you?
I make a list every time I go to the
And you
grocery
lose
store,
the
and
list.
I lose the list. Now I make the list in my phone, so I don't have that problem
And then you
anymore.
lose your phone.
No, I don't usually lose the phone, but I've smartened up on that front because I make a long, elaborate list, and then I walk out of the house
You do?
without it. Yeah.
Do you know what I do, by the way? When you know a grocery store, like I know every grocery store that I go to, I arrange my list by aisle. Do you know that on my phone? Isn't that impressive?
It's quite anal, actually.
Well,
Jim.
maybe it is, but it works for me, doesn't
Arrange
it?
your list by aisle.
That's exactly what I said. You just repeating it? That's what I said. I arrange it by aisle. Dairy is the first aisle at my favorite market basket.
Oh, my God.
Pasta is the third aisle.
Okay.
And then you get to your produce at the end of the thing. We have time for one more 30-second call.
Daryl. Hi, Daryl. Thank you for calling.
Quickly, Daryl. Hi.
Well, thank you. Firstly, you got it spot on. You need to have a checklist.
Yes.
You have to check the grocery list. Get what you need. Plan it. Get what you need.
Amen.
And look at the grocery list before you get in line. Secondly, go shopping with your spouse. So if you forget something, the spouse goes to get it.
That's
if
right.
you are checked out before the spouse gets back, you get checked out, and the spouse just has to put the items back.
By the way, Daryl, that is a brilliant end to this conversation. If you're with somebody, you send them, and if they don't get back fast enough, you show respect, you pay, and so be it. Daryl, that was an excellent end to an excellent discussion. Thank you for calling. That was incredible. Now, I know Jared well enough to know that if you're in front of him at a grocery store, assuming he's ever been to a grocery store, and you leave to
But
get...
he doesn't have to go.
to
He
get
only
some
has, what do you have, a bottle of vodka
as
and some
Diane said.
olives? Is that
you,
it?
you don't let him back.
Mints.
You don't let him back
Thin
in,
mints.
do you? Do you let him back in? You don't let him back in, ever, right?
Well, you kind of. I mean, so
What do you mean
if somebody's
kind of?
doing that, they're really harried, right? And so you feel
So
bad
what?
and you let them back in. Well,
You
kind
let
of,
him back
yeah.
in?
I have to say, this is very triggering because
Why is that?
when I was a kid, my mother would forever, we were just talking about this, would forever be sending me back to get something. And I'd be running through the supermarket. And I'd be all stressed
Oh,
out
that
that I
makes
would get
me
back.
nervous.
And then I'd have to pay for it. Like I, as a 9-year-old, have a checkbook or something.
They're going to arrest you for stealing.
Exactly.
really sad
It never
story.
occurred to me that no, I wouldn't actually be held to account for paying for whatever I had to grab.
Wow.
Oh,
Wasn't that
really
Didn't you have to do
painful.
that? That was stressful. No.
I don't remember ever going to the grocery store.
My father left me at the grocery store a few times, actually. It's true. That is not a joke. He did.
Oh, where's little Jimmy? You forgot him in the produce
He's
aisle.
a really good person, that guy. Okay, what do you?
Explains it all, doesn't it, Jerry?
Maybe it does.
explains a lot.
Who cares what it explains?
Should we spend the
That's all
last
we're
2
talking
minutes
about.
unpacking?
So, no, we've unpacked it for a long time.
Telling
Trust
you
me.
to reach
Still
for the top
slightly
shelf
packed.
for the thing he knows you'll never
What are you
get.
doing
That's
at?
right.
What are you doing? I do that for a lot of old ladies, by the way. I do
James,
the
I need
top
the
shelf.
Goya beans.
I don't do Goya beans because
No.
of his support for you know who. Okay, so
But your father didn't know that.
No, he didn't. That's true.
Did he make you get the Goya beans when you were a little Jimmy?
He made me do a lot worse. Okay, no, actually, that's not fair. He did. He was not kind, but he didn't make me do worse.
Oh, that's
okay. Let's
good.
leave it there.
Oh, my
okay,
God.
let's move ahead here. What's on your show
House
there?
of Horrors there.
It was.
No,
Maybe
it is
it
a
was.
House of Horrors. So
Right.
today on the show we have George Takei, Lieutenant
great.
Sulu. So we'll be talking Star
He
Trek,
is
his activism.
spectacular.
He
He
is.
is
And
just
that
great.
voice. I mean, you just
Just
kind of
great.
stop listening to what he's saying because
He's
voice
doing
is
the
so
thing with Sonny
mesmerizing.
Williams. Keith Lockhart told us, right?
Yeah, he's here
What
for the
a
Boston Pops.
Twosome. Wow.
Yeah.
What else?
And then we're speaking to B. Dylan Hollis, the TikTok star.
Oh,
who
great.
Cooks the old recipes.
Yes.
And so he has a new cookbook out. So he's
Oh, that
going
is
to
great.
talk about baking his way across America. And then we'll have a preview of Boston Calling.
Excellent.
Oh, I hope the weather improves for Boston Calling.
Well,
Well,
it's gonna
by
be better
day
to-
3, I think. Yeah.
Well, even tomorrow's going to be better than today, so
Oh, it
good
is?
luck to them. Okay, good luck. We'll see you later.
Okay, bye.
See you in the
Thank you, Jared.
cashier line.
Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. Oh, Jared's show starts right after ours here, right on
it does.
89.7 GBH.
amazing how it works.
And we have a TikTok page, which is kind of fun, at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're going to be back at the Boston Public Library with live music Friday, courtesy of singer-songwriter Jessye DeSilva, who'll be playing Club Passim Campfire Festival. We'll also talk with Club Passim Managing Director Matt Smith. Then it's fan favorite Karen Reed trial expert Sue O'Connell.
It's a big week, too.
It's a big week. We're going to talk about Canton, too, whether there's a pub crawling 24/7 over there in Canton. I can't believe that's true. Katie Theoharides from the Trustees of Reservations and the Globes. Lylah Alphonse with GBH's Adam Reilly for our media analysis segment, Press Play.
Great.
We want to thank our great crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, Patrick Lally, who runs our YouTube stream, our engineer, John LaClaw Parker, our executive producer, Jay Bologna. The Culture Show, as I said, with Jared Bowen, starts immediately after us on 89.7. We just have a thing from a Trader Joe's cashier who says she sees this kind of thing all the time. If someone walks away, you know what she does? She moves their carriage out of the way and takes the next person who's actually ready.
That's a leader for
that.
you. I'm Jim Browdy.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Hope you have a great day and hope the weather gets better.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Boston Ballet, presenting Romeo et Juliet, a fresh take on Shakespeare's timeless tale with breathtaking choreography and live music by the Boston Ballet Orchestra. Opens May 29th. Official tickets at bostonballet.org. When a young, disillusioned doctor leaves the UK, she moves to South India and finds work at an understaffed and overworked hospital. Watch Good Karma Hospital, tonight at 9 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org.